Green Harbor Waterfront Lodging is nestled in a woodland setting on a picturesque ocean inlet. Green Harbor offers so much for a fun-filled yet affordable family waterfront vacation. Enjoy our private boating beach with ramp and dock, free rowboats and paddle boats, oversized heated outdoor pool and kiddie pool. You'll enjoy our attractive waterfront and beachside accommodations. So visit us online at gogreenharbor.com.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Monday, December 2nd, 2013 meeting of the Falmouth Board of Selectmen. I invite you all to rise and join the board as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. My name is Brent Putnam. I'm chairman of the Board of Selectmen. To my left is Mary Pat Flynn, Selectman, Town Manager Julian Suso, and Assistant Town Manager Heather Harper. To my right is Vice Chair Doug Jones, Selectman Kevin Murphy, and Selectman Rebecca Moffett. Some procedural announcements before we begin. If you have a cell phone or some other device that might spontaneously create noise, we ask that you silence it or turn it off for your duration with us. If you choose to speak tonight, and there will be opportunities for public comment, we ask that you wait to be recognized by the chair. When you are recognized, please come to the lectern, identify yourself for the record. We may know who you are, but the folks in the audience or at home may not. As my, our recording secretary this evening, I think, is our assistant town manager. Please identify yourself for the record, direct all your comments through the chair. And if you decide to leave before the meeting is over, please recognize that the meeting is not over and we still have business to conduct, so please do so quietly. Please refrain from any conversation here in the room or immediately outside in the hall because it can interrupt the proceedings. There is a speaker's policy on the door. We ask that all speakers adhere to that. And finally, if there's anyone here who wishes to record the proceedings this evening, you may do so by right. If you have audio, we simply ask that you announce that to the board. If you would choose to record by video, you do need permission from the board. So at this time, is there anyone who wishes to announce an audio recording or request permission for a video recording? All right then. So with that, the announcements and proclamations. I don't think we have any proclamations this evening. Do we have any announcements from the board or the town manager's office? All right. This evening, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be entertaining public comment. We are going to allow 10 minutes for this. Each speaker is allotted a maximum of 2 minutes. You may speak for less than that, but no more than that. And once we reach the 10-minute maximum, well, I apologize, but we do have other items on our agenda, so there will be no more public comment after that. You will be able to do this every meeting that we have, and it will be at the beginning of every meeting, same rules, 10 minutes, 2 minutes maximum. So, anyone who wishes public comment in the back? Good evening, Ron.
Good evening. Thanks, Brent. My name is Ron Zweig, and I am the town representative on the Cape Light Compact. And I would like to bring your attention to our greater listening and watching audience to the Cape Light Compact's programs in energy efficiency. They can provide assistance to homeowners for working with appliances, light bulbs, furnaces, and homeowners, business owners, rental properties. They have a special program for low-income households. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention. And the number you can call, 800 number is 800-797-6699. And online you can check the programs out at www.capelightcompact.org. So for anyone who's interested, please give a call, and the operators are waiting. So and this is all part of the county's services to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Anyone else? Going once, going twice. All right, thank you all. All right, and with that, the next item on our agenda, we have minutes of meetings, public session, November 12, 2013.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the minutes of November 12th, 2013.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? It's unanimous. And we also have the minutes of the public session for November 18, 2013.
I move approval of the minutes of November 18th, 2013.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Unanimous. And then finally, we have an executive session for November 18, 2013.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the minutes of the executive session of November 18, 2013, and not to release to the public.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Unanimous. And for our summary of actions, I'll read through these, and if anyone wishes to hold one, please let me know. Request for off-premises signs, Friends of the Senior Center Holiday Fair, December 7, 2013. Request for special event, Vigil of Remembrance for Newtown, Peg Noonan Park, December 14, 2013. Vote mediation in Ballymead versus Town of Falmouth. Vote to accept the 2013 Edward Byrne Grant, Police Department. Approve payment from the Monduano Beach donation account, Charlie DeMello Bobcat Service for shower tower base installations, Surf Drive Beach and Falmouth Heights Beach, $9,300.
I move approval of the actions 1 through 5.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve all the actions. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Doug, I'm going to hand this one off to you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to recuse myself for the wetlands hearing and turn the gavel over to the vice chair.
We are conducting a wetland hearing, and I first need to announce the notice of the public hearing notice at the Falmouth Board of Selectmen, and this was posted and printed in the Enterprise. We'll hold a public hearing under Section 240-77 Wetland Regulations of the zoning bylaws of the Town of Falmouth on December 2nd, 2013, at 7 p.m. in the Selectmen's Meeting Room on the application of Michael and Cynthia Sarad for permission to construct a timber walkway, pier ramp, and floating dock in the waters of Bourne's Pond, 59 Old Minot Road, East Falmouth, Mass. The area affected is Bourne's Pond. So we'll now open the hearing. For the proponent,
Thank you. My name is Tom Bunker with BSS Design, for the record. Typically, my engineer Jeff would do these hearings. He's recuperating from knee surgery, so I'm here for you now. Project at Old Minot Road is at Bourne's Pond. I brought this map along from the town GIS to show it's very high up in near the north end of the pond. In this location here, Old Minot Road, Bourne's Pond, Route 28, it's right up here. There are a few small piers beyond it. It is a fairly shallow area. I can point out also that the entire shoreline on the opposite side is not developed, so there are not likely to be any piers going in from this other side of the waterway. I want to point that out. Our design has been approved by the Conservation Commission. They have a house here, been here for a few years, path running down. There's an old cranberry bog in this location, the border crossing it, a little bit of a barrier beach, a knoll through here, and then the pier, ramp, and float comes out a total of 50 feet. And the reason we have it out here is because of the water depth at low water. Conservation Commission requires 3 feet of separation from the bottom of the float to the land under the water body at low tide. So from our sounding here, about 3.5, sometimes a little bit more than 3.5. The flotation obviously is a little bit below the water surface. So this does leave us with 3 feet of separation, as is required by the conservation regulations. This has been approved by Conservation, as I pointed out, and it does conform with all of the local regulations and the state and Army Corps of Engineer regulations also. And the reason I point this out, there is a referral from Greg Frazier in here, where he was asking if it could be shortened. The chain of emails that Jeff had replied to Greg at the time is that we would have had to request a variance from the Conservation Commission to shorten it. And as I said, it was approved by them. This is we feel the best location for it. Corps of Engineers, I think it is, limits the length of the dock to less than 25% of the total width of the waterway, which this does. I think it's about 22%. And on top of that, I pointed out there's nothing on the other side. There won't be any piers on the other side, so we're less than the 25% to begin with. And there'll be no piers on the other side that can restrict navigation. And we're up at the very north end of it, meaning there'll be very few vessels up here that could possibly be restricted or constricted by the pier. We, listened to, took Greg's referral, but we feel that based on the plan that we have and the conservation requirements, that this is a good, the best location and design for it. So I'll take any questions.
Yeah, I have a few questions. You mentioned the dock, well, just in looking at the design, it's kind of a long walkway to what's referred to in there as the berm, from the old cranberry bog that was
Yes.
in there. And then from the berm out to the dock is what, about 50 or 53 feet?
It's 50 feet, including the float.
50 feet, including the float. Then what is the distance from the berm to to where the old block steps used to be at the edge of the yard in the walkway? Do you have,
Hold
I
on one
couldn't
second.
really figure that out on the map.
Don't have my scale with me.
Oh.
It's a 20 scale. This is about possibly 7 inches, 140 feet.
140
It's a long
It's a long-
boardwalk, but
it's a
it's
long
not, again, it was approved by the commission.
Right, I understand.
I mean, this is a long boardwalk. It's not really considered part of and that's perhaps why Greg, was questioning, because
Right.
it looks long because of that structure. But that's not actually in the waterway, so it shouldn't be counted toward the total length as far as the harbor master is concerned.
No, I understand. And I know there was a concern on the harbor master's part in terms of the distance from shore to shore. And apparently where the dock and the float are going to be is within that distance that's allowed under
Yes.
the wetlands regulations. Is that-
Yes, it's
that's
less than
correct?
25%.
Now, that used to be an old cranberry bog, all that wetlands. Is that correct?
On the other side, I'm not.
I
this-
thought it was
this
on
one-
that side,
This one is a former cranberry bog
a
here.
former cranberry bog.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Question, Kevin?
I have-
Mr. Frazier,
Use them.
and I typically think by the time things come to us, they've worked their way out. But Mr. Frazier, and I want you to comment on this, claims that if you move the dock back 20 feet, you'll still have 3 feet of water. You want to make a comment on that? In other words, that you'll have adequate depth
Yeah.
at the float. In his request, the applicant move back to the 3-foot line and thereby reduce the overall length by approximately 20 feet. Total length would be approximately 30 feet instead of the 50 feet. So Mr. Frazier believes you'd still get the 3 feet of water at 30 feet versus 50 feet and would not block that channel or that waterway as much as you currently are proposing.
It's true, there would be 3 feet of water, but not 3 feet of water below the float, because the flotation goes below the water. As Jeff said here in his reply to Greg, 6 inches below the surface of the water. So there will be 3 feet of water, but 2.5 feet from the bottom to the bottom of the seafloor, seabed, to the bottom of the flotation. Only 2.5 feet, but the Conservation Commission requires 3.
3 feet from the bottom of the float or 3 feet of water?
3 feet clear separation, 3 feet to the bottom of the float.
So not 3 feet draft for boats, but 3 feet from the
3
construction.
feet, they want anything out there, including the float, to have 3 feet separation at low water.
But that doesn't really ring true, because if you put a boat there, the boat is going to draw something between that and the bottom. So I don't follow your logic there. In other words, there's 3 feet of water. Most boats draw at least 12 inches,
Right.
24 for, 18 to 24 for an outboard.
They
So
require, the commission requires 3 feet,
3 feet of water.
3 feet separation. 3
Okay.
feet clear from the bed to the bottom of the flotation.
Well, that's an area where I'd like to get some clarification.
Yeah, I agree with you, and also, it's not very often that we get recommendations from our harbor master and from our marine environmental director with suggestions for us to consider. And in this particular application, we have those recommendations from both, because Chuck Martinson, who is also the shellfish constable as well as the deputy director of marine and the environment, talks about the very delicate ecosystem that we have in Bourne's Pond. And we know that Bourne's Pond is one of the 3 that are so very fragile that they are part of our water quality management wastewater comprehensive plan. The town is looking to actually do some inlet widening at the inlet or outlet of Bourne's Pond. And it's really seriously degraded. And so anytime you put more boats in a pond like that, it creates more issues. And I think we need to look at that a little more carefully, but we didn't have the time because of, usually we get these applications in at the end of the week, and then we have to talk to town staff, and that's not always easily, one can do that in a very short period of time. And because of that, because I'm not comfortable yet considering this until we have more information from Marine and the Environment related to the status of Bourne's Pond, as well as the issues that were raised by Kevin. And I would like to see us continue this hearing.
No, I don't want to
not
entertain that motion yet until we've had a chance for more information.
Okay.
I think
All
that's,
right.
ultimately,
That's
that's
fine.
a great
That's good.
recommendation,
Okay.
but I want to see if there's more information out there that,
Okay.
do we have some more questions from this board?
Well, it's not a question, but I would, if we do go down this path a little bit longer, I'd like the town manager to be able to get us a definitive answer from the Conservation Commission on whether it's 3 feet of water or 3 feet from the bottom of the float. And you're referencing some emails that corresponded between Greg. We don't have those emails.
Right.
Just so you know, I mean, we've got to follow the paper trail here as well. Okay.
Any other questions from the board? at this time?
Well, my question is the very first sentence. Bourne's Pond is a very delicate ecosystem. And I think that's the first thing that I have to think about as far as the wetlands and what is happening with Bourne's Pond. So I drove out there, and I walked around the property, and I took a look. And then I thought, well, if you have one dock, there isn't anything to say that maybe there's going to be more docks. I mean, I just looked at it as it wasn't an area. Maybe I had it in my mind delicate when I walked around. But I just looked at it as we need to have more time, to have more discussion. And I'm not convinced that there should be a dock there.
Any other questions from the board at this time? Do we have any other proponents, people supporting this application who'd like to speak? Anyone opposed to this petition who'd like to speak at this time? Okay, hearing anyone from the audience, we've had our questions asked. I would entertain a motion.
I would move to continue this hearing until January 13th at time 7:30?
7:30.
How about 7:30?
So we have a motion to continue the hearing, not close it until
I'll second the motion.
January 13th at 7:30.
And just a comment, it's a tough position with this board currently. We're only 4 members, you need 4 votes. So we want to make sure that we can work this out, because Brent recused himself. The supermajority is unanimous from what's remaining, so we want to make sure that we get all the answers before, to give you the benefit of the doubt.
understand.
Okay?
So we have a motion to continue, a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye.
What was
Opposed?
that date again?
January
The
13th,
13th.
7:30? you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And could you leave us 4 copies of the plan too? Because we usually have to have 4 copies to sign, but we won't need them until the next meeting.
time.
Huh? Yeah, thank
And
you.
can I ask through you, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
If the town manager's office could find that information out from Conservation Commission?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Next item on our agenda, we have an application for a new wine and malt common victualler license, Papagino's Incorporated, 56 Davis Straits. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of the General Laws as amended that Papagino's Incorporated has applied for a new wine and malt common victualler license to be exercised at 56 Davis Straits Road, Falmouth. Hearing to be held this evening. The applicant or the applicant's representatives?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, before we begin, I'd like to disclose that I'm the holder of an all-alcoholic seasonal liquor license.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Excuse me, I didn't.
I'm the holder of an all-alcoholic seasonal liquor license. In my real job, I own a restaurant.
I don't know if I'm supposed to present you with this.
Yes, we'll take that. Thank you. And you folks are?
My name is Christine Kucher. I'm the district manager for the Falmouth Papagino's location.
Okay,
I'm Dan Sylvester, the general manager for the Falmouth location.
all right.
We did hold a liquor license many years ago in the Falmouth Papagino's. We recently have done a remodel there and looking to get the liquor license.
Any questions
No.
from the board?
Well, we're talking beer and wine.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
but you're,
Yep,
yeah,
okay,
right.
fair one. Yep.
Mr. Chair, we have heard from the Health Department that they have no concerns about this. And we also, we have from, I think we had the recommendation from the Police Department, which I cannot find right now.
Let's see if we have that in this one. Here it is.
That they have performed a query.
They've conducted a coin check of Mr. Sylvester, and they have no problem with issuing the license. Any questions from the board, Mr. Murphy?
The Board of Selectmen has a requirement of TIPS training for
Yes.
on-premise licenses, and also the requirement, of course, that those who serve the product be over the age of 18, and you'll be able to comply with those?
Yes.
Both, okay, great.
I just have a question. Were you working for Papagino's at the time they had the license before?
Yes.
You were, so, okay, so you're familiar with a lot of what
Yes,
needs
I
to...
was the general manager actually at the Falmouth location for many years.
Well, I guess we're going to open up the public
Right.
hearing.
This is any last questions from the board at this time? All right, this is a public hearing, so we will entertain questions or comments from the public. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this? Anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this license? Anyone who just has any questions? Okay, hearing none, how would the board like to proceed?
Make a motion to approve?
Can we close the hearing first?
Okay, make a motion to close the hearing?
Second.
Okay, motion to close the hearing in a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? It's unanimous. All right,
Make a motion to approve the license as presented?
Second.
okay, so we have a motion and a second to approve the license as presented. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition? It's unanimous. Congratulations.
Thank you.
My signature. All right, the next item on our agenda, we have a report from the Golf Advisory Committee. Mr. Suso, we have a presentation.
Yes, we do, Mr. Chairman, and Assistant Town Manager Heather Harper is making sure that our PowerPoint is warmed up, and I think if we're going to launch into it immediately, we'll turn down the lights.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Selectman Moffett.
Bob Young, Chairman of the Golf Advisory Committee, is here.
I'm Bob Young, Precinct 5, and Chairman of the Golf Committee. And I'm pleased to report to the Selectmen tonight. As we report tonight, the Golf Advisory Committee is in its 9th year as an advisory board to the Selectmen for the operation of Falmouth Country Club. And I'd like to highlight some of the activity at the course, and following my report, have the course management team of Billy Casper make a further detailed presentation to the board. 2013 golf season has been a successful one at Falmouth Country Club with approximately 40,200 rounds played over the 2 courses. This is slightly lower than the total rounds played during 2012. However, projected gross revenues of $1,401,500 is nearly the same as the past 2 years. There was a slight fee increase halfway through 2012, so that helped us a little bit out on that. In that regard, we did have a lot of rain in June, so the rounds were down a little bit, as June is one of the key months on the bell curve. The town will receive $382,454 in rent this year, an increase of 3% above our 2012 rent fee. A lot of this I've gone over before, but I'd still like to read it into the record. Both residents and visitors may enjoy affordable golf at Falmouth Country Club with greens fee rates structured slightly below those charged at other area clubs, making our course that much more affordable and attractive to area golfers. Residents also have the additional advantage of purchasing an annual pass that is similar to a golf membership, which is also priced below membership fees that are charged at other area clubs. The annual pass provides unlimited golf to the pass holder on our 2 courses, and there is also a resident golf reward fee card that Falmouth residents may have. I have one right here in my pocket now. General Manager Matt Burgess and his staff provide golf at Falmouth Country Club that is both affordable and pleasant. All golf requests are handled in a friendly and professional manner by the club employees, and Head Superintendent Bucky Hall and his grounds crew also continue to do a tremendous job in maintaining our course. And I might say especially this year, the greens are in fantastic shape. I've played out there 4 or 5 times this year, and they're the best around. The course is in excellent condition again, and we have received comments attesting to this fact, which I think the BCG folks have a couple of comments in there and letters from players at the course. And according to Bucky, when I spoke to him, there were no major routine maintenance, no major issues at the course this year. We also continue to maintain an Audubon certification, which is kind of neat. They have birdhouses all over the course, and I think we're the only public course on the Cape that has that certification. I know there are a couple private courses that have it, but that's a little feather in our cap. And the thing that I really like is this second page here is the numerous programs in place for our junior golfers at Falmouth Country Club. I know when I started, we had to sneak on the Woods Hole Golf Club at night to play golf. Then they let us play on Mondays after we started to caddy. The club supports the Cape Cod Junior Golf Association, which is a wonderful program. They teach etiquette as well as golf. We partner with Helen in the Recreation Department, and they have a program out there for the youngsters and residents and visitors. And there's a junior membership pass, which is affordable. And if you want to go out there with your child, the adult would pay, and the child could play free on the talent course. And we are the home course and support Falmouth High School boys and girls golf teams. And the girls team calls Falmouth Country Club their home course. And this year they won the Mass Bay South League, and they had good success in the States. And I think one of our players made it all the way up individually until the 3rd position in the States, which is quite a feather in our cap. I'm pleased to report these avenues of golf available for the youth through our club. And in closing, we are nearing the end of our second 5-year contract with Billy Casper, this 2014 being the final year. The town continues to be served well by Billy Casper as our course manager and operator. And I'm stealing a line from Selectman Murphy when I say this is a good example of a successful public-private relationship, which it is. Suggestions made by our committee are noted by the Billy Casper Group and usually acted upon, and our committee has a good working relationship with them. And that's my report, Selectman. And I could take any questions, or I can turn it over to Billy Casper to make a more detailed.
Questions at this time?
I'd like to make a couple of comments about where we are in our relationship with Bill Casper and the length of it. We've had an over 9-year relationship with this organization. They brought some very high-level professional skills to the town, including some savvy marketing and management techniques to the club that had previously not been there. At the same time, the course remains very approachable. In fact, that really is one of the hallmarks, is that it still is a very approachable place, and that was very important to our positioning of the market, both in our initial outreach to an operator, but in terms of our goals for the course in perpetuity. We are approaching the end of our formal relationship, and we'll be looking for a successor to Billy Casper Golf. We have a very strong expectation that they want to continue the relationship with the town. But we will have to do a formal public bid procurement process. It's going to be a request for proposals. I want to make sure I use the right term so as not to confuse anybody. But that will be happening over the next year. So it really is an important year for the town with the golf course. But we've really forged a really strong partnership with Falmouth Country Club and Falmouth Golf and Billy Casper Golf. And it's important to recognize that moving into the next phase of our relationship. So thank you for your service.
Brian Phelps is the district.
Just
Yes.
one question, if I might. What hole is this, Mr. Jones?
What, doesn't look like something to found?
Not that many bunkers.
That's in Connecticut, it's close by.
My goodness.
That's Winterberry Hills in Bloomfield.
Thanks for having, I'm just going to make sure I understand. Okay, got it. Forward back. Thanks for having us, Selectmen and Julian and Heather. This is our annual presentation. Typically, just talk a little bit about the business. And Bob, as usual, you stole most of our PowerPoint already, but thank you. I just want to introduce a few people. This is Matt Burgess. He's the on-site general manager and director of golf. Secondly, most important man in the room, Bucky Hall, 26-year veteran. He's the one that makes the golf course the product that it is, day in and day out. I'm Ryan. I'm the director of operations from just north of Philadelphia to Cape Cod. Dan Evers is new to this group. He's the regional director of agronomy, so he works closely with Bucky Hall. And Rob Higbee behind me, he's our director of marketing. And Joel Goldman, the big man right here, not physically, just our boss. He's the senior VP of operations. I'm glad to have you guys here too. We spent the day up at the club. I told him next time we should have the meeting in July though. So couple of things just briefly about our firm, in case you didn't know. We're the largest privately held golf management firm in the country. We're also the largest domestic operator of golf courses now. We operate 150 courses, so we're growing rapidly. When we started with Falmouth, we operated just over 40, so our growth has continued as well. 80 of our facilities are municipal clients, just like yourselves. So we're also the largest operator of municipal clubs in the country. We have about 6,000 employees. We play over 4.5 million rounds of golf annually at all of the facilities, and we have almost 2 million unique contactable golfers in our database, and that's important in just a second. We'll talk about that. Why hire BCG, or what's our firm bring to the table? For one thing, really the last bullet here, we have an owner's mentality. We own outright about 20 of our golf courses. So when we come into a facility like yours, all the marketing, all the programming, all of the initiatives, we're also implementing at courses that we own. So we're managing your facility in the same manner with the same resources and tools that we would use at an owned asset. We have a regional presence. All the people in this room, although we're not in Falmouth, we're in your market. So we can be here in a moment's notice. We support Matt and Bucky for various meetings and any operational items and needs that they have. I mentioned most of the rest. We're going to talk about our marketing and firepower and some proven systems that we have in just a second. I'm going to keep this brief, I promise. I know you guys have been in session for a while. Again, our regional team, we talked about that. What's behind the 4 or 5 of us in this room is a support network in Vienna, Virginia. So we have all the IT and support with internet and phone and technology and computers. Obviously, a full, robust accounting department that provides financials, performs self-audits, delivers those financials to the town. VP of National Accounts, which makes sure that our partners, we basically leverage them for the best prices possible on everything that we're purchasing. A marketing officer that Rob Higby reports to that drives our marketing efforts. We have an HR and legal team, make sure we're acting in accordance to state laws and the jurisdictions that we operate in. And then, of course, our operations team, some of those people are in this room. So what makes us different is, one, we put a huge emphasis on the guest experience. So when you go to Falmouth Country Club, one of the things you should notice is how you're taken care of as a guest. Our mission statement as a company is to treat each guest to a fun and enjoyable experience. And it's really just that simple. If the guest can leave happy and accommodated and taken care of, he's going to give you repeat business. Maybe later this year, maybe on his once-a-year trip. But we take a large amount of time with employees on their first day of hire, put them through somewhat of a rigorous and a lengthy orientation. Talks about service standards and expectations from us. Everything from how you dress with a uniform and a name tag to how you answer the phone to how you should approach guests with eye contact and a smile. Just very basic things, but things that can go a long ways in the service industry. After we do that, we have to measure how we're doing. So we mystery shop. These shops are a third-party shopping firm that is unbeknownst to us. We get mystery shop 10 to 15 times a year, and these are very robust shops. This is a 60-point, it depends on the time of year and who's working, but it's around a 60-point analysis of your business. And it's written out. This will be about 15 pages long, where that guest comes, purchases items in the pro shop, purchases golf, plays golf, eats afterwards and goes home. And they measure all of those points, and it's specific where they'll write commentary on what was your guest interaction specifically, who was that person that you interacted with, did you feel you were being treated to a fun and enjoyable experience, would you consider a value for the money that you paid, how was the course conditions, how were you treated by the marshal, the course ranger, and most importantly, would you return as a paying guest? So that helps us make sure that we're delivering on what we think we're delivering on every day. And so this, if we get a good one, like the one we put in the slide, we can pat ourselves on the back. If we get a challenging one, it just means we've identified an area where we can improve on and have some coaching and training session. Data capture. We've talked about this a lot in several years. This is kind of the heart behind why we think we're more successful than a lot of our partners or a lot of one-off operators, is we collect a lot of data on our golfers. So we understand not only who they are, first and last name, we also get email address, zip code, and in some cases, mailing address. The way we get that, it's a non-harassing way. We just ask for it, and we have incentives to give us that. We'll give you a rewards card. For first-time users, we'll send you, if you provide your email, we'll send you a $10 thank you coupon that you can use on your next visit. Rob Higby, our marketing director, is going to talk briefly on what we are able to do with some of that data.
We are able to do a lot of very interesting things with this data, especially since Matt and his team are one of the best in the company at collecting this data. 96% of all golfers that come through the doors at Falmouth are contactable golfers through either via email or by mail. All the data that comes off of that tee sheet is driven straight into one of our databases, and what we are able to do is extract reports similar to these that I'm going to flip through. This is a utilization report. So this shows us when the golfers are playing by hour of the day. We can break this into weekdays, weekend, pull out any particular month, and it allows us to know where we might need to fill some gaps in the tee sheet, or where we could be very successful in filling tee sheets, and where we might have pricing power. We can dig even a bit further and find out what player category type is driving in particular time frames, and then also how that relates to our total revenue per each hour day part. So this also provides Matt and I the opportunity to go in and find where we've got room for some needed growth, where we could possibly implement another program to fill in with additional revenues, or also what does a benchmark hour look like? And what we can do is try to use other items that are programmed in to some of the lower revenue producing hours and duplicate the positive results. We can dive in and look at how every single hour of the day by every category is standing up to one another based on APR per golfer, the average spend that they're spending to play the golf. We also track where they're coming from by zip code. This allows Matt and I to determine where the best place and use our marketing dollars to possibly run advertising and print, or also try to reach out to more individuals from these particular areas to join into some of the events at the golf course. We also measure the trends of every golfer, how many rounds they're playing with us every single year. One item that you'll see across the entire golf portfolio in the United States is that there is a lot of one-and-done golfers at every single golf course. Our goal is to develop programs that will move them up this scale and turn a one-time golfer into a 2 to 5 or 6 to 15 round golfer, and continue to move them up the graph through our different programs that we offer.
Okay, on to distribution channels. So the golf business is changing dramatically as technology age is coming along. If you're familiar with Orbitz, Hotels, Expedia, a million others, Kayak, the golf business is doing this now as well, where you're able to, as a golfer, go to one website, look at a myriad of golf courses in your market, and look to see all their prices and what times are available. So that's changed the competition, and the people that are able to utilize that better are going to ultimately have better results. So we're seeing that was 2% of golfers a few years ago, then it was 5%. Now it's north of 20% of golfers are booking this way, and an astonishing number are actually booking now through their handheld devices. So it's something that we have to pay a lot of attention to. We've got our tee times that are on our website, which by the way is www.falmouthcountryclub.com, are always the lowest price. So we're just like an airline where you can go find it on one of these, come back to the Falmouth website and save some booking fees. But it's also very important that when we're on these websites, that the pricing is competitive, that it makes sense, that we're not out of any particular range. The way we're able to effectively do this is we don't have to do it. We've got a revenue manager in Virginia that is all he does, he or she does. They look at these tee sheets, they look at all of our golf courses and where our pricing is, and they can flag us down if there's something that's out of sync. There's not as much fluctuation in golf, obviously, as in an airline, so it's not something that we have to look at by hour, but it is important to pay attention to. And it's going to be coming, if we're here in 10 years, which we want to be, this is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and this type of marketing is going to be important. Some creative programming that we do. We have a lot of events at Falmouth. The world's largest golf outing was one that we're going to touch on just briefly in a second. We also hold a Residence Day, and we're going to talk about that in a minute as well. But I want to just demonstrate an example of some collateral pieces that we design. We hold an in-house design firm and PR and communications firm. So any press releases, PR press releases, any communication or outreach to magazines that we want to get any information out to, we've got a firm that's really dedicated and built relationships with those news agencies to get some word out. But our in-house design firm is able to turn things around very quickly. So if we want to do a Residence Day in 2 weeks, we can get it into design, we can get it turned around very quick. This could be a billboard on 195, this could be a banner at the club, this could be a poster, 8.5 by 11s, table tents. This stuff is designed for us by a design person in Virginia that deals with Falmouth Country Club exclusively as one of his set of clubs. So he already knows what the market is, he understands what the logo and what the consistency of some of our messaging looks like, and we can go and create this stuff very quickly. So world's largest golf outing. We're very proud of this event, especially at Falmouth. August 12th, it was held this year. It was held at 100 Billy Casper courses across the country. Falmouth had one of the highest participation rates in the country. We had 160 golfers. The donations were pouring in like crazy. This was a tournament to benefit the Wounded Warrior Project. We got a lot of press on this event as it occurred. We raised $735,000 in that one day exclusively for the Wounded Warrior Project. So we're getting close to that 7-figure mark, and it's just we want to see more of that, give people a reason to come out. The club is still obviously doing business on greens fees, but this money was far and above our expectations for this year. Now Matt Burgess is going to talk about some of the programs that we have.
Yeah, we have a lot of offerings. I like to say that we have something for everyone. Whether it's a full membership, or an unlimited season pass, an individual season pass, a twilight pass, a junior pass. You know, when can you play? How much do you want to spend? What kind of golfer are you? If you don't play enough that you think you should purchase a membership, we have an Advantage card, which is substantially cheaper. It's for that golfer that might play 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year, but it'll make you want to play at Falmouth Country Club because you're going to get a substantial discount and part of a rewards program if you use it. We also continue to have the Residence Golf Reward Card and just a regular golf rewards card that anyone can get. You know, they're free to residents, free to anyone who plays Falmouth. The resident card obviously gives you access to resident rates, which will save you substantially as much as up to $14 on your green fee in the summertime. What else? Player development programs are something we're really proud of at Falmouth. Falmouth is just a unique property. It's just with the 9-hole golf course and the 18-hole golf course. We have a driving range, which now we're one of the only driving ranges around. It's a perfect place to people to begin to play golf who might be a little bit nervous. We have a Get Golf Ready Golf for Women program, $99, 5-hour-and-a-half sessions. It's geared towards the male or female who's very nervous, maybe never played golf before, very intimidated. It's, you know, how to just even hold a golf club, the etiquette, the rules. You know, set you at ease, get you on the first tee with very little pressure, you know, the first tee jitters that everyone hears about. We have an E-range program. Again, the driving range is extremely popular. It's a great way for people who are used to, or people who hit a lot of range balls, who can come in, buy just an E-range key. It just goes right on your keychain. You can preload it with different discounted amounts, $50, $100, $200, depending on how much you want to pay. You don't have to drive all the way into the clubhouse. You can just pull right up to the driving range and hit some golf balls. It's great, again, for working on your game. And the Advantage card, again, we offer for the person who likes to play golf, but the PDP card, we started it this year. It's a program for someone who just likes to practice. It's unlimited range balls. It's set up like a gym membership. It's a monthly fee. You get access to the golf course later on in the day if you just want to go walk a couple holes, and again, just work on your game. As Bob had said earlier, we partner with the Recreation Department. We run their junior camps in the summertime in July and August. Helen says it's always one of the first programs to fill up. I know Heather's kids have played in it, and it's just a fun event. We try and keep it light. You know, kids at that age, you just want to keep it as fun as possible and educational at the same time, because these are the future golfers. These are, you know, this is the future of our country. It's the future of the golf courses around. So we want to get them exposed to golf young, early, get them to really enjoy themselves. Kids play free. Again, I don't know many other golf courses that let kids play free. You know, if it was like Disney or something where they say kids are like 5 and under, but it's under 18. So, I mean, we consider kids all the way through high school. So, you know, I know lots of families come out on vacation in the summertime and they'd love to go out and play golf at a golf course, but, you know, if you got a family, a mother and father, they might have 2 or 3 kids. It'd be pretty expensive if they all had to pay a green fee, but if the parents just have to pay and the kids get to go out and have a good time on the golf course, you know where they're going to come back every year. They're going to come to Falmouth. And there's many stories of people who come up to me and say, oh, when I was, 5, 10 years ago, this is where I learned how to play golf. And I used to get to play with my parents. Because we've done this since the beginning. Rob's going to talk about Women on Course. It's a new program that Casper's involved with.
I'm going to be really brief with this because this is something that we're still developing. But Matt alluded to earlier in the slide that there's a lot of barriers sometimes where new golfers are very concerned about coming into a new game, and there's concerns that they have. Once we get some of the women golfers through some of our beginner clinics, sometimes there's not always a next step for them. We have recently partnered with a Women on Course, which now provides those ladies a non-competitive next step. This is more based on the social aspect of golf and providing a non-competitive events that would be held at Falmouth. This is going to be a spring rollout. There will be more information coming soon, but it's just another good way to get new golfers into the game in a very non-intimidating setting.
And And Bob Young touched on our commitment to the environment. This is very important to us, not only at Falmouth, but all across the country. Falmouth Country Club is Audubon certified. That's a rigorous process. It takes several years to get certified. We've been recertified a couple of times and have held that certification all the way through. Basically, it looks at what we put down on the golf course, the chemicals, the fertilizers, the application rates, and how we take care of the environment. And they hold it to very rigorous standards. We also have our own standards as well that we hold each golf course to. We leave the golf courses in better condition than they rest before the golf course was put there. Other programs, we have recycling programs, we have programs in development. This is something that as we kind of enter into years to come, we feel like it's an extremely important process. We want to be ahead of it. So you'll see a lot more on this to come too as we develop. National partnerships, talked about it. Pretty much everybody that does business in golf, we have partnerships with. So we leverage them hard. We buy things cheaper. 100% of everything that we get in a discount, rebate, incentive goes straight back to the clients. So when it comes time to purchase equipment or golf cars or food, equipment, anything, fertilizers, chemicals, we have very good pricing. Capital's a little bit old now. We're looking at what needs to be done in the next 10 and 20 years and beyond. But just to reiterate what we've done in the last couple of seasons, the tent's gotten more and more popular. We're doing weddings out of there. We're doing parties out of there. It's a gorgeous spot in the summertime. It doesn't have to be golf related at all to have our party. So that's translated, that investment, which was small, has translated into additional revenue. Driving range, the same thing. Used to be kind of iffy. We put that new pad down, bought new mats, invested in a better range machine with some E-range keys and things like Matt mentioned. And the driving range revenue, which we shared with the golf committee this morning, has gone up and up and up. That's a really good one because it almost all falls to the bottom line. So you buy a few range balls and you just pick them up. So we want to continue to grow that. I'm sure the course closed, the range in Falmouth that closed didn't hurt us either. We added air conditioning to the building, so it's fun and relaxing to hang out in after you're done. And then the biggest improvement was finishing on the championship course, making the 9 holes that were older, about 30 years older than the newer 9, match. So we went through, we reshaped them, redid the bunkers, and that golf course has a lot more continuity to it, and the guests are all raving about the differences. It's definitely very noticeable. Community involvement, we're involved in the Falmouth Commodores. We sponsor them. We also take interns for the summer, get at least a couple of them that will work for us. Participants in the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce as well as the Falmouth hold a business after-hours events occasionally. Lots of local businesses, high schools, charities hold their events with us, and we love hosting those, and it's a win-win for everyone. Resident Appreciation Day, just to plug, this will be on Patriots Day next year. It's $1 to play golf, so we hope that everyone that's a golfer anywhere in Falmouth or Mashpee comes out and takes advantage of that. It's $1 and we feed you. If you take a cart, we charge you for the cart. But it's a very popular day. If it rains out, we'll have it on another day, because we want 300 or 400 people at this thing to kind of show off at the beginning of the year before all the traffic comes down, so they can take advantage of it before the season starts. And that is the end of our presentation. So we appreciate the time and being able to come up here and talk to you guys.
Any questions from the board? I do have one question. It's actually for the town manager's office, that the RFP that gets issued for this, that's something that the board eventually approves. Am I correct or no?
The contract?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
That would come back to the board.
Right. So presumably, if we have several potential bidders on this, we could see other presentations from other bidders?
Conceivably, yes.
Okay.
I have one question. What sort of trend are you seeing in the players' maintenance of the course?
Players' maintenance, as far as it's a great question. It's a challenge always, and I think you see it at Run the Game, especially in the public environment where you're doing a lot of rounds. I don't know that I would say it's any worse now than it has been. We still try to educate the golfers on how to fill in divots and repair ball marks. Bucky, you're probably better at answering that if you think it's something that's got...
I would tend to...
If you could come to the microphone so the folks at home can hear you.
I would say today's golfer is not as aware of golf etiquette. They don't learn the game the same way. I'm not, everyone's welcome.
Could you identify yourself for the record?
My name is Bucky Hall.
Thank you,
I'm sorry.
Bucky.
I'm the golf course superintendent of Falmouth.
We know that. I don't know if the folks at home know that. That's the thing.
And I'd say that, divot repair could be a lot better. I mean, it seems in the last few years it's been getting a little bit worse. It's just something you deal with, most people are good and take care of things, and there's certain people I think you could talk to, you're blue in the face, and they just feel like they paid their money, they're going to do what they want to do on that golf course. But most people, by and large, do take care of it.
Thank you.
Is there any effort, though, to try to educate the golfers that come through? I'm not a golfer myself. I've tried a few times, didn't like it so much. My wife, on the other hand, is an avid golfer, plays in competitive leagues, and one of her pet peeves is that, as you just said, there are a lot of golfers that she plays with, plays against, who some of them don't even know the rules. And it gets very frustrating for her, and I'm sure it gets very frustrating for other golfers to follow behind folks who don't understand the rules or have to deal with that.
Well, one thing we do at Falmouth, every year Matt and I have we bring on the crew, after having a skeleton crew all winter, when we bring on the new people, we have a couple of meetings. Actually, it's required by Billy Casper that we sit down with them, we educate them about what the Billy Casper goals are, what we're all about, the things we're looking for. And one of the things we talk about relating to this is talking to the people that are the starters and saying what we expect them to do while they're out on that first tee with people, and explaining some of the things. They need to fix their ball marks on the greens, they need to fix the divots that are taken on the fairways and whatnot. I mean, one problem that Falmouth has that's a little unique, I mean, being an older course, we have 2.5 acres of tees on 27 holes. That's not nearly enough, but it is what it is. And we do the best we can to keep up with, especially on par threes, tend to get chewed up an awful lot because everybody's hitting irons. So and we do what we can to keep up with that the best we can, but by the time you get to the middle of August or whatever, you have a dirt area and you put down new seed, but the seed's getting hit before it ever even gets a chance to germinate. So, we keep up with it the best we can. I actually think this year, as far as the tees go, they're actually coming out of the year in pretty darn good shape. We did a few extra things this year that we hadn't done in years past. Plus, people were talking about how the conditions of the course this year were quite good, and one of the reasons was we have a new machine for aerifying that is just phenomenal. It's so much faster than anything I've ever had. We aerified those greens. I used to aerify the greens 2 times a year, all the time, and then we kind of got in a process of, everybody hates when you aerify the greens because they're no fun to play on. So we cut back to 1. And now we're back to 2, and I think that's made a big difference. And we're also doing that in the tees and throwing a bunch more seed on as we do that, and it tends to germinate a lot quicker because it's getting better soil contact and things like that. So again, I guess to answer the original question you had, I just think today's golfer isn't as educated as they used to be. And we do try in the spring to tell everyone working out there, take pride in the product here. We're representing the town of Falmouth, we're representing Billy Casper Golf, and I tell people as much as I can, and at the same time realize they're here on vacation. You tell them the best you can and leave it at that.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Questions or comments from the public? So just so everybody's aware, we have the contract coming up for renewal or potential renewal next year. So we could see other presentations, and this information is something we're going to have to consider in the coming year. So, all right. Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we get the lights? Next item on our agenda, we have an order of taking of and authorize layout of Cassius Trail, Castle Road, and Sandcastle Drive. I will read the first paragraph here for the record. This is an order of taking for the layout of Cassius Trail, Castle Road, and Sandcastle Drive. We, Brent Putnam, Doug Jones, Mary Pat Flynn, Kevin Murphy, and Rebecca Moffett, as duly elected and qualified selectmen of the town of Falmouth, acting for and on behalf of said town under the provisions of Chapter 7, 9, and 8.2 of Massachusetts laws, and in accordance with the provisions of Article 26 of the town meeting held on April 10, 2013, copy of which is annexed hereto as Exhibit A, and by virtue of every other power having complied with all preliminary requirements prescribed by law, do hereby adopt and decree this order of taking, and do hereby take by eminent domain for public purposes easements for the layout of Cassius Trail, Castle Road, and Sandcastle Drive as townways in the land described herein.
Mr. Chair, do we need to amend this to actually be the November 13th town meeting? Because the original one was in April. We didn't do it in time to actually do it correctly, and that's the reason why this past November we had to redo this. And so I think actually the date is November 13th, Article 45.
Okay. Good catch.
Yes, correct.
So this would be Article 45 of the town meeting held on November
13.
Would it be 13? That was actually the date, but it was the 12th that town meeting began. So it would be the 12th, okay. Are there any questions about this? Someone make this their motion.
I so move. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from the public about this? What we're essentially doing is taking these roads for the purpose of becoming town roads. They're previously private roads.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment. Oftentimes when we take them as public ways, public roads, we also, it has been by petition of the neighbors or the owners of the that abut the roads, and then we have to, and then they pay to bring them up to standard. But it's important to point out here, the roads are already up to standard. So we're just taking the roads as they are and moving forward, so there's no construction project going along with it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Unanimous. Pass that around for signatures. Okay. There's a few more signatures needed for this as well. Next item on our agenda, we have the special events policy. All right, any questions or comments on this? Mr. Jones?
Mr. Chair, sorry to start the discussion on this in a negative note. I actually am not comfortable with us giving up the authority to approve the special events for the purposes that it allows the public to have regular input as to when these events are going to happen and let us know that they aren't happy, whether they are happy. I noticed it is 69 different things that have done this year. I would be comfortable with it being approval of the beach weddings. I think we had 16 of them. But I think the special events, there are a number of them that are already delineated as still being under our jurisdiction. The others, I still think it is our job to hear the requests. Half of them do get approved as a summary of actions fairly quickly. The other half, I think it is our job to approve them, hear from the public, and make the decisions on a regular basis. And so I really appreciate the amount of time that we kept putting into the town manager's office to come up with this, but I guess I just don't feel that I can support it the way it's written to take that away take it out of our hands.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Well, I guess I'm not really clear. You want all the events to stay the way they are, to come before the board except for weddings?
I tried to look down the list and see where I would break down, and I couldn't come up with a very clear line I would draw, with the exception of the beach weddings. The other 69, I thought, well, Some of them are unique this year, we're not going to see them again. Some of them were ones that say, well, that is a big enough of an issue, it's go over 2 or 3 days, it's 5,000 people. I couldn't come up with a line as to where to draw it, saying, I thought we were giving up too much input and ability for the town, for the people out in the town to say, we just want you to know, this has inconvenienced us, you closed the road, and I didn't see under the new policy how they would get that input in for all these events.
Well,
Go ahead, Kevin.
I don't totally disagree with you. I think that as a member of the board, sometimes we do have stuff that is mundane, but just because it's mundane to us does not mean it's mundane to somebody else. For some folks, things are very important to them. If you live by the band shell, anything that occurs there is very important to you, and you want to be able to at least have a bird's eye of it. I surely think that the special events policy, even if you took that out, is something that we need to continue to develop, because I think it provides a guideline for us as a board and for those folks who are applying for events permits to be able to go by. So when you say you don't want to relinquish the authority, I think you could merely take out number 2 and continue to keep the rest of the special events policy. Then we have a guideline to work from. But I know why we originally thought of doing this. It was to cut down so that we spoke about more important issues. I think we have drastically cut down because the board is a lot better prepared, because we have, with our new meeting schedule, these things tend to go out. We have copies of agendas, future agendas right now. There's always going to be those last-minute scenarios that come forward, but I think the board has gotten to a point where we're a little bit better in knowing what we're talking about. I'm perplexed. I do understand that folks want to, have their say, but.
well, another option, though, would be to refer to the town manager's office events that occur on an annual basis. That it's the same group that comes back year after year, and you can name, I mean, maybe not the large events. We've already carved those out, like the road race, but there are a lot of other events that occur on an annual basis, and it could be presented to us as these are all the pending applications that we have heard, and we have discussed and approved, and we're sending them to you for your final approval. So, in other words, they would do all the contacts, talk to the applicants or whatever, and just send us these are all pending our approvals based on any input from the board, and then we just approve them in a blanket form. You could do something like that.
And I kind of agree with one part of what you're talking about. Currently, everyone gives us referrals, and then we sift through the referrals. What this was originally proposing is that the town manager has a little group that brings together, and they go through the referrals, and then they come up with a recommendation. Now, we could streamline our process by that, meaning that the town manager will have already met with them. There are a lot of times we're waiting for, something from the fire department or something from the police department at the last minute. They'll have had an opportunity, so that's a good idea. I like that.
And then it comes
And
with the
we can still
calendar.
accomplish what Doug's doing at the same time.
Yeah, so we still have that final say, if you will, knowing that we have had the opportunity to review what the recommendations are coming from the committee. And it would still give us some exposure, and it would give the people who are asking to have an event a little exposure too, because it would be read out. I mean, you're not going to have more than, 5, 6, 7 a night. So it isn't like they couldn't be read out. These are all the ones that are pending your approval. They've all been vetted by us, and we agree that these could occur at this time, at this place, and whatever. And you get the copy of the calendar to show when they're, and that's the other thing that the group can do, is manage when they're going to occur so that we don't overload the town on particular days or weekends. Anyway, that's just a
We-
Rebecca?
I did a bit of math on this because I was really, I mean, we had heard the number of events. So I'm going to take a little bit of time and read this to you. In the month of May, we have 9 events on weekends, the month of May. In the month of June, we have 9 events. July has 20 on the weekends. August has 8. September, 11 events. October, 11. November has 1. December has 1. March has 4. And April has 4. So in looking at that, the heavy part of it really kind of comes in between July and August and September. And I think that if someone else is going through these and is thinking about how many neighborhoods are continuously being used, and to think about the dates. My thought is, many times our residents are continuously inconvenienced because they can't get out the driveway, they can't get to the grocery store, and it goes on that same type of thing, and with the same people that are inconvenienced, and especially our bike path. So I just looked at it, and where all of these are happening, and they're all happening on the weekend, I mean, is it 69 events that we have, plus 16 beach weddings? That's a lot of activity for a town that has a main street and just one auxiliary. So I think of traffic, I think of the economic of what happens, and I think of the residents and what they incur that they don't especially need to do if we could just straighten this out in a different way.
In a follow-up, by doing the special events policy, following what Doug's talking about, we still don't eliminate the summary of actions, because we still have one-day liquor licenses. We have sign variances that, directly in the charter that says those are our responsibility. So maybe we could break up the summary of actions as summary of actions, things that were requirements from us, and then events that have been pre-approved by the committee, and any one of us could hold those events, and then we'd still have that opportunity that night to make a final vote on it.
Yeah, I kind of like that idea, breaking it up. I mean, you could put licenses in one category, because we sometimes have 2, 3, 4, and 5 at a time. Licenses, then you could have whatever the next grouping is, and then a third grouping, and they'd all be under the summary of actions. But you're right, it would make it clearer to go through each of them instead of having them all on the same list. And then especially if we were to adopt the idea of having them all vetted prior to coming before the board, that could have its own special list, because they were all previously approved by the group.
I've got a few comments myself. First of all, I think there's the one thing that's missing from the draft, and we really haven't had an opportunity to discuss this at length, and we've got some time this evening. I wanted to make sure we had time this evening to actually discuss this at length so we can start moving forward with it. When we originally talked about this, the idea was that we would delegate routine things. And when we talk about routine things, it's the definition that I thought of at the time, and I'm not sure if everybody else is in agreement with it, but what I thought of as routine were those things that kept coming back to us on a regular basis that really didn't change. So you pick something on here, for example, the Jazz Stroll on Main Street. Every year, we have the Jazz Stroll on Main Street. It's the same event run by the same people in the same place every year. Nothing really changes. There's a lot of these events on here like this. And a lot of these events, like the Jazz Stroll, it impacts Main Street, but it's not an event like, say, the 4th of July fireworks or the Falmouth Road Race, which have community-wide implications. There are a lot of these events that come to us on an annual basis, and you look at our summary of actions this evening, and we've only got 5 items. We've actually had as many as, I think, 18 or 20 items sometimes on the summary of actions, and it only takes a couple of questions from some member of the board, and all of a sudden our summary of actions, which should pass quickly, I mean, that was the idea behind the summary of actions originally, is what we saw tonight. We read through it, nobody needed to hold anything, it passed. Easy, breezy, no problem. That's not usually what happens. And so the whole idea of developing a policy was around the idea that some of these events, routine events, that it hasn't changed from last year, the year before that, we can pass these things off to the town manager's office. And that's not what I'm seeing in the draft policy, and I think that needs to be incorporated. The second thing I'd like to point out, and one of my concerns about the draft policy, is reading over it a few times, we've got two things in here. This is a special events policy, but it also gets into land use. And we specifically call out Peg Noonan Park and the Village Green. I honestly think that if we're going to develop a land use policy for those parcels or for any and all of the parcels in town, we need to keep that separate from an events policy. I think a very good part of this policy, actually, you see on pages 2, 3, and 4, where it starts with the minimum conditions, and it itemizes A, B, C, D, and all of the various things, the issues that need to be addressed, the approvals that need to be obtained, insurance liabilities, all of that stuff. These are the kinds of things that we've needed to have in a policy so that we could hand this off to an applicant and say, these are the things you need to be concerned about, so that they know when they come in that everything is there and there's no surprises for them. So basically it's those two things that I have concerns about. One is that the policy as it stands delegates, I think, I tend to agree with Doug, I think it delegates too much, but I think it delegates too much because it doesn't specifically identify the fact that there are these routine, mundane things which come back to us every year. I mean, really, are we going to deny the jazz stroll? Is there any reason for us to have that before us, unless they decide that they want to have it go from the Village Green all the way down to, say, Marina Park, in which case we're talking about an expansion of what they originally proposed, and now it should probably come back to the board for further consideration. If we're just talking about the same thing that we approved last year, and the same thing that was approved the year before that, and there's no change and there's no complaints, I don't see why the town manager's office can't do that.
I just don't understand where you draw the line. You know, the jazz stroll's great, but maybe Lennon Fest isn't, and, you know, who determines, how do we determine which are the ones that are repeat great ones, and then which are the ones to say, maybe we need to keep an eye on that one? And I just don't know how to determine that.
I think, first of all, a repeat, let's create this definition. It's going to be an event which has been previously approved by this board, in which there's no change to the event. So it's on the same, generally the same date, or you know, that's going to change, obviously, for something that's going to be on a specific weekend, or like the third weekend or whatnot during the summer or something. It's something which occurs at roughly the same time, uses the same town facilities, is managed by the same people, there's no expansion or change in the way the event is run, and it's been previously approved by this board.
Marathon road race, I mean.
But then we have to put the exceptions in and say, okay, is it something that has a town-wide impact, or an impact that extends beyond the immediate vicinity? So when we're talking about road races, for example, that are asking for road closures, that's going to have an impact beyond the immediate vicinity, because as soon as you start closing roads, you're going to affect traffic patterns in the region, in that part of town, or even throughout town.
I have to say that just because an event was held before doesn't mean the event went well. Typically, those are the ones that people, all of a sudden, we said, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. They held the event, and oh my gosh, used to see what the impact was.
Well,
those are the ones that we might want to. I will say that by having the town manager and a committee, you know, with the professionals actually get together and not have us decipher everything, will streamline our whole process. The town manager is going to have a recommendation. Listen, I met with the chief of police today, the DPW director, blah, 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 and here's our recommendation collectively. and we can move forward, it'll streamline our process. I also will make a comment, I think that coming up with a separate land use policy is kicking the can down the road, because I think it has to be in the grouping. We need to address it because it's for special events. It's collectively together, so I think we need to address that within the events policy at the same time. Otherwise, we're just kicking a can down the road.
The only problem with that is we've got nothing in here about, for example, the use of Marina Park. We've got nothing in here about the use of the Heights Ballpark. There are a lot of parcels in town, and, I mean, the Heights Ballpark, that's come back to us on many occasions with a number of controversies about who gets to use it and how it gets used. And Marina Park, of course, you know, as previously noted, sometimes there's concerns about the sound, the volume of the music that comes out of there. There are a lot of parcels, and when we start talking about an events policy, you start lumping in all these parcels. Now we're talking about a policy that becomes, I think, overly cumbersome and difficult to manage. I think we need a land use policy or something to cover these parcels, but I think lumping it in with how we manage the approvals of these events, it's mixing apples and oranges.
Well, I will respectfully disagree with you, because I think that a couple of the parcels that are named here, we just really don't want a lot of special events on, because that's why they're specifically named. And specifically events that charge some kind of money. So I think that's why they're specially named. You know, we started a public comment portion of our meeting, and we established a policy that was going to be subject to review. Mm-hmm. I think we need to start somewhere. You know, if you want to continue to add parcels to review that, and I think we can do that. But we need to start somewhere. We need to move something forward on that. Sure.
And the other thing too is we have to think about letting go in a certain sense. I mean, you can't get into every detail detail. And if we could just let go and let the professionals take a look, they know what to look for. They know whether or not this is something that they need to bring to us, because they know what our thinking is. And I think we just, like what Kevin says, we got to start somewhere and give it a try. And I'd much rather have, not to make it too complicated, make it as simple as possible. You review, you approve, you send your recommendations to us, and we have to take the time to look at them and read them and understand what's been approved. And then it shouldn't take very long at all. And then we can get some experience and see how it goes.
But I have to agree with Brent. I don't think the land restricted use fits into this policy. I think that the way it is written right now, it is picking out 3 or 4 events and making a rule that because of them, as opposed to really looking at how do we want land to be used. And I'm not sure we're in complete agreement about the specific ones that are mentioned, that we don't, I think, all agree we don't want it used. I think there are some great uses for it. And I think that that's going to be a major stumbling block in moving forward in the special events policy, to have that land use just for those 3 parcels, for the town hall, Peg Noonan Park, and the Village Green, when there's much other land mentioned.
And we don't even have the town, and that's another one. Well, actually, events, Town Hall Square, yeah, so Town Hall Square is mentioned as well. But again, like I said, there are other parcels that we haven't even begun to look at. And while I understand the idea of starting somewhere, I think where we could start with this is the section 4, which talks about the conditions, and try to refine that section.
Well, if I may, we all agree on the Village Green. I mean, there is no question that the Village Green is holy ground or something. I mean, you very seldom use it for anything. Unusual vigils we have had there, you know, like at 9/11 and so forth. But in terms of the rest, Town Hall Square, the Village, Peg Noonan Park, and the other, why don't we just let the group see what they come up with? I mean, instead of trying to pick apart each event and say which should belong here, which should belong there, let them do the work and make some recommendations to us. And see, because I think the group certainly knows what our thinking is. And knowing that, and knowing that even though this is what it says, then let them implement it and make the recommendations to us, instead of us trying to figure out what could happen there, or what shouldn't happen there, and what should happen someplace else.
The only downside of that is we need to give some kind of guidance. And
Yeah.
coming back to where Doug says, how do you pick and you choose? We're gonna let this event happen there, or we're not gonna let that event happen there. So you need to have some guidelines, and that's what we
I
put
thought
our
that's
big
what
board
this
pants
was.
on for every now and then.
I think that there's too many moving parts. And I think we're trying to mix too many things. We're doing dates, we're doing locations, we're doing size, we're doing annual, we're doing, it's only one time. There's too many moving parts. I think what you just said, Pat, is the point that let the committee that is being formed come together with all of their decisions, bring in a recommendation to this board, then bring up your questions individually if that's what you have. But I think right now, I'm hearing land, I'm hearing dates, I'm hearing times, and it's too many pieces to say everything fits into one area, and it doesn't. Each one of these have an individual reason why they're here, how many people are coming, what's involved. What we should have the responsibility is to come to the final vote about, is Falmouth allowing this activity to happen? And all of that we've just said right now, we don't have that discussion anymore. The group, the policy group will have that. And I think then your questions will come out as we see what their recommendation is.
The only downside with that is, we're gonna have something then that's gonna come before the board, because they're all gonna come before the board. And then some people are gonna say, I don't wanna see that there, and then we'll get into a discussion because we didn't address it in a policy.
Oh, I don't know.
No, I agree, but like you said, we've got to start somewhere, and like with the speaker's policy, it may be a good idea, and in fact, I would suggest taking another glance over this, maybe one of the easiest ways to start with this would be to remove the Section 2, and under Section 3, remove the references to Peg Noonan Park and the Village Green, the A and B. And then that gives us something that I think it's a starting point. And, and also, I mean, not everybody was here on the board, but Kevin, I don't know if you were here at the time, Pat, you may remember, we actually had discussions about a land use policy a few years back when the board voted to allow, there was a church group that set up a tent in I think it was Old Silver Beach parking lot. And all of a sudden, there was a huge hubbub about separation of church and state, and one of the things that was discussed at the time was we need to have some sort of land use policy that defines, okay, how are we going to allow these kind of events? And so, again, we can restrict ourselves and say, well, we've got Peg Noonan Park, and we've got Town Hall Square, and we've got the Village Green. But that's the tip of the iceberg, folks. I think we've got to start, first of all, let's go back to where we started with all of this, which was we've got a lot of these events on the summary of actions. Sometimes there are dozens in any given meeting. Sometimes it can take us a long time to work through them. I think there's a framework here, especially, like I said, under Section 4, the idea of handing off, allowing the town manager's office, has been said here, to provide recommendations to the board so that we can just move through this quickly. And I think we need to take the parcels of land and actually create a separate land use policy that's going to cover things, because we're inevitably going to have something. I mean, we could pass this tonight, or we could move on something like this. But then what happens when we've got the event that comes before us for the ballpark in the Heights or Marina Park? We've left those out, and now we have to come up with another policy. I would say let's start drafting a policy, a land use policy that says, how do we want the town's properties to be used, and make it all encompassing.
Can I make a
Yeah,
suggestion
go ahead.
here? Just like on the beaches, when we started permitting weddings on the beaches, we had a lot of success. It can be determined, I guess the question is, what do you call success? sometimes, and that's what happened. You're a victim of your own success, because we had a lot of weddings, and everyone started to want to get married on Saturday afternoon in the summer, and then we made a value judgment that that's, you know, in the middle of the peak of the summer, we don't allow beach weddings from when the beaches open up until they close. And I think that's, I mean, in other words, not until after 4 o'clock. So I think there's a possibility that, i.e. with Town Hall Square and Peg Noonan Park, that you could just establish that as part of that period of time, the months of July and August, that you're not gonna have them there. Because there's plenty of other time, there's plenty of room there. But just like the beaches, you can't put too much stuff in a 3-pound box. And I think it needs to be addressed. And, you know, I look at every other agenda we have coming up, and it all says with the special events, they're all waiting to come on, subject to special events policy, subject to special events policy. We have, you know, the elephant in the room, which is the farmer's market. We have the Falmouth Road Race. We have the Striper Fest, all of which are saying subject to the policy. So we have to make those decisions. We have to. We can't keep kicking it down the road.
But when you look at those events, Striper Fest is always at Marina Park. The Falmouth Road Race is always, it's along the shore. The only one of those events that would be affected by this is the Peg Noonan Park aspect. I think, again, if we're going to deal with parcels, I think that should be under a separate policy. I think we should focus on the events here and then come up with a parcel policy, if you will, and start working on that. And maybe we're going to end up going like with the speakers, the public comment period. We're going to start with a draft that we work with and, you know, work through that as opposed to trying to have a finished product before we get anything done.
And one of the ironies of it is one of my favorite events as a child was on the Village Green. Yeah, with the nurses' fete.
The nurses' fete,
They went on and that was the big event in town.
That's right.
Was on the Village Green.
Mm-hmm.
It's just odd the way things, and that has now become the place we can't do anything.
Well, that's because they stopped having the fete.
Okay.
And when they stopped having the fete, that was something that had a very special relationship to the hospital, to the community, to nurses in particular. And when that no longer occurred, then the Village Green took on a totally different aspect and vision by the community, just as a space where you don't want to have all that activity in that particular area. You want it to stay open, and so that when people drive down into town, they see it, and it's not all cluttered up with events. And that's how it all happened, as I remember. Somebody with more history than I do.
I would be happy to follow your suggestion and move that we approve the special events use policy of items 1 and 3 and 4, but in 3 removing the references to specific locations, so paragraphs A and B.
Okay. Before we go any further, I want to make sure that we give the public the opportunity to weigh in on this, because we have mentioned before that this is posted on the town's website, so if there's anyone here who would like to speak with respect to the special events policy.
The elephant in the room. Call me an elephant. Good evening, my name's Kate Mahoney. I don't know what precinct I live in. I was going to start with that, but I also am the Falmouth Farmers Market Manager, and have a number of comments that I'd like to try to quickly get to, not get too far off track here, but I'm kind of glad we followed after the golf event, because I think that they made a lot of points about what they're doing, and it reflects very similarly to what we feel that we are doing as the Farmers Market Board, and the event that we have and the benefits. And we've done our presentation, as you all obviously know, but people at home and some people here in the audience might not be aware of. But we did our PowerPoint presentation. We hope to come back to you again soon to actually do that, but it's so tied together with how this affects us that we really would like to comment quickly on that. So, for instance, one thing that you said, Brent, Mr. Putnam, the farmers market has community-wide implications, and we've tried to express that for the number of years that we've been doing our presentations for the last 6 years. In the first 4 years of our coming before the board, we were lumped together with the summary of actions. There was no big discussion. We were embraced by the town. We realized that you, as you've talked tonight too, that, you know, victims of our own success, et cetera. I don't think we should be, it's a weird phrase. I don't like to think of it that way, but I can see why that terminology is used. But we were under the summary of actions. Now, there's more specific implications that we need to address, but we do consider ourselves a private-public collaboration. I think that how that fits into the special events consideration is really important. And we feel that as the special events policy gets developed, we know that the Village Association has been part of that policy development. They've been consulted, and we think that this has such huge implications for our event and for the town that we are a valuable stakeholder, and we should be, as we expressed in our PowerPoint presentation back on November 4th, we'd like to be a regular event. We hope that that might be considered in part of this policy development, but whether it is or it isn't and how that might flesh out, we really do feel that we are an important stakeholder, and we should have a voice in, if it is left to the professionals, as you say, if it's going to come out of the town administrator's office. We really feel that because we have a volunteer board, we've been very active, we're committed to this event. We don't think that Peg Noonan Park should be isolated out, as you expressed earlier. You know, it might happen that we don't even want to think about that right now, so forget that. I'm not even going to get into that one. But there's two things happening. There's an event issue and there's a land use policy issue, and there's overlap for sure. But we do feel some of the items that you said are part of your conditions, previously approved by the Board of Selectmen. There's no change in event. We're not changing the event. We're not doing any of those things. Same time, same place. Same organizing principles, same organizing people. Stop that. If we move, you know, the suggestion of going to Shore Street or whatever, that would be a road closure issue. That does create a different change. So anyway, those are my basic overview thoughts, and we would like to be definitely part of that future discussion in public as well as a policy group. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Question?
Well, I'm not clear about what Doug is proposing. I'd like to go back to that. I'm not sure what you meant. You eliminated 2 altogether? Is that correct?
Yep.
And then what did you do?
Well, I guess, I mean, I still like the idea of this working group existing and make its recommendation to the board. And I'm not sure how we word that, but I think I'm very much in supporter of the board, this working group making its recommendation. It can be another section of the summary of actions in which we rubber stamp what is being recommended to us unless we have a question.
Then what about 3? That's what I'm not clear about. What
I'm
are
not
we saying
comfortable
about
talking
Peg
about
Noonan, Town Hall Square, and the Village Green?
I don't want them listed in the special events policy yet.
So remove paragraphs A and B.
Yep.
Remove paragraphs A and B.
On page 1 at the bottom.
Do we substitute
Begins.
anything with that, or do we come up with some other
I think we need to,
direction regarding these 3 areas? I mean, they are the most sensitive areas, that's very true, and they're the ones that people like. So we'd have to deal with it somehow.
Yep.
But I realize that it should have less wording than what it has, maybe, or
Well,
maybe more.
and I guess I would feel more comfortable, and Kevin mentioned this, is the idea of activities, big activities happening in July and August on Main Street troubles me. But that isn't mentioned here, and I don't know exactly how to all of a sudden frame the policy that I would prefer, which is saying, July and August, we're not going to have events on Main Street.
Well, can we maybe say that you, since you proposed this, work something different and bring it back at the next meeting? Because we need to really finish something up. I'm happy to work with you on it if you like, on how we might
And B, I have no problem.
reconstruct
The Village Green one, I have no problem.
items, everything that's listed under number 3, is to rework it in some way and work with Heather or,
I also think that you need to keep 2 in here in some form or fashion, that the town manager shall establish a working, what are we calling this group?
Well, why don't you folks collect your thoughts? Is there anyone else in the public
Yeah.
who'd like to offer some feedback?
I applaud Mr. Jones for reserving to the board something that I think people would like to talk to the board about periodically. Although certainly I think there's a role for a town manager's office in terms of looking at your calendar, looking at referrals, et cetera. But don't take away every opportunity for us to have a chance to talk to you. So keep that in mind. But the other is, I think it's very valuable to get information from departments, to get referrals, and certainly from the town various departments. But I am troubled by you're also looking to get referrals from private organizations, particularly the Village Association or other related neighborhood associations. It's obvious that there are some conflicts between some of those associations in terms of what they want in their particular village or not. So I think that it's unwise to have that there. Now, you're looking at me a little bit puzzled, and it could be the fact that although we appreciate the fact that you posted this on the website for us, it seems like there may have been some changes that the website hasn't caught up with, because as you talk about removing sections, that's not in the version that's on the website. So it's very hard to follow you when you say, we'll remove section 2, for example, because what's on the website doesn't have a section 2. It may have certain paragraphs. So if you've changed things and you've eliminated, for example, the input from Falmouth Village Association or related neighborhood associations, I apologize for that, but the website hasn't kept up with your thinking on it.
Actually, no, there is on page, for the board's edification,
Yeah,
on
look at
page
that.
4, under section 4, the minimum conditions, page 4, item P, all special events require review by the following departments. And then it goes down, and at the bottom it said referrals may also included Falmouth Village Association, related neighborhood association.
That was O on the website, by the way, and without the section. So, again, we really very much appreciate you giving us an opportunity to look at things that you're going to be discussing. But if it's out of sync with what you are discussing, it's difficult.
Yep.
But I guess the main point is, I think it's valuable to test the temperature of the community at large for some of these events, and to have it completely in the hands of the town manager's office doesn't allow us to do that. But if you, and yet I do think there's a good role for the town manager's office in terms of, gathering all of that information that otherwise you're looking at. But I just think it should be town departments and not picking out certain private entities, whether they be associations or otherwise, that might have a particular interest in promoting or prohibiting certain events.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Tricia Gadsby, I'm a member of the board of the Falmouth Farmers Market, and one of the things I just wanted to remind you all of is that we have to start sending out applications for the Falmouth Farmers Market quite soon. Farmers have to plan in advance, plant in advance, know what they're going to be doing quite some time ahead. And my concern is that this process, which was started in the case of our application in September, is taking a long time. And at this point, we don't know how to proceed. So if you would bear that in mind in your deliberations, because we either need to get moving soon or we won't be happening.
Well, two things worth considering. One is, unless you folks decline to hold a farmer's market, this board is going to approve your application in some way, shape, or form. So I would assume that right off the top.
But we don't know where.
Well, it's going to be somewhere in Falmouth, so I think you can make those plans right off the bat. The other thing is that last year, looking at the records, this board didn't approve actually all of the events that we talked about, whether it's the road race or Striper Fest or the farmers market. None of those events were approved until, I think, January or February last year, or this year, actually. So if we approve these events in the next, say, 2 weeks, we're ahead of the game versus last year. So just to keep that in mind as well.
That's true to a point, but last year there was no question about where we would be. That changes gain considerably as far as we're concerned, because we have to be able to say where we're going to be. People make decisions partly based on location.
Okay,
So that's just my point. Thank you.
understood, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to offer some feedback here? Okay.
Can I just make one suggestion on number 2? Maybe we could do the town manager shall review all events with an established internal working group and make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, period. In other words, we know what the town manager's internal working group's his proposal is, but in our policy, just the town manager shall review all events with an internal working group and make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. Keep it very simple.
It can't be under the title of delegation.
No, it's not under,
Because we're
I'm
not-
sorry, we
Something
wouldn't call
else.
it delegation.
Because we-
Recommendation, how's that? And then they would still come, all of them would come, but they would actually have a recommendation from the town manager's office. I like your idea, Pat, though, because I think we need to come to some consensus on that number 3, and I think there seems to be some middle ground there.
And we'll have all that information prior to the meeting, so all we have to do is read it and then know, and then if there are concerns, we can always deal with them, possibly even before the meeting actually
But you
begins.
were talking about meeting with Doug.
With Doug, yeah. You want to do
about
that?
number 3, and, maybe we could send Doug
Revise
some
that in
input.
some way.
Is there,
You
is-
have-
I'll throw my 2 cents in. I'm still inclined to remove paragraphs A and B, because I think we're talking about a policy, a parcel, about land use policy versus a special events policy. And I think that the 2 should be separate. I think we're ignoring the other parcels that can be sometimes controversial, like the Heights Ballpark, like the Marina Park. I think those have to be included. And I think it's going to be easier to move this thing along, like we did with the public comment, to remove some of these sections and start working with this, as opposed to trying to shoehorn these things in here, because then we're going to have to shoehorn in every other parcel.
Well, I think that, I have a feeling that there is some relative consensus that the months of July and August, that all 3 of the locations are not places for running events that you're selling products. I think that's really,
But how does that play, though, into the fact that we close off Main Street for an entire day? For
Well,
vendors who come in, sell products,
I'm actually going to make a recommendation, we move that to Kathleen Lee Bates, and I've talked to Ray Jack about how actually that thing could move off Main Street, the Arts and Crafts Fair, and go on Kathleen Lee Bates instead. So that would also still be able to work into, Main Street is going to be a place that, July and August, that doesn't happen. And he actually says from a security point of view, parking point of view, that idea could actually be a huge benefit. And if they don't want to come because they're not on Main Street, that's their choice. But
Actually, can I make a suggestion? And I know it may not go over very well, but based on what Mr. McNamara said, it looks like what the public has available to it is not what we have in front of us. There are some things that need to be reworded here. I think we can certainly bring this back in 2 weeks with an updated draft to make sure that it gets online as well, so that the folks at home can see what we're seeing instead of seeing something completely different. I think there are a few things here that we can agree upon. Mr. Murphy, I got no problem with the changes that you suggested to paragraph 2. I would tend to agree with Mr. McNamara that we eliminate referrals from third-party organizations because of potential biases. I think they would have that opportunity, just like any member of the public would have the opportunity to come in and speak in favor of or against a particular event. What we want to do is establish a policy so that internally, the town manager's office has guidance as to how they go about approving these events. I don't think it's, if we're going to start opening it up to any organization that isn't actually a town department, then we have to open up to every organization that's not a town department.
I think we need to think pretty carefully about that, because, and I'm just looking at the Village Association. They are organized around Main Street. I mean, that's what they do. They're all the Main Street merchants. And they have a vested interest in Main Street, both individually as a business, but also in the town in a certain way too. And I'm not talking about permitting events. I'm really talking about just getting input from an association like that. I mean, they have spent money on Main Street. The Chamber spends money on Main Street in terms of, you know, some of the decorations and things like that. But I just think that we want to be, I realize, reading the implications, may want to make a referral. It's a may thing, it's not a required thing. There may be an occasion where you may want to inquire from another organization about what they think. I just don't think we should, right now, rule all that out, because, and maybe it doesn't even have to be in the policy. You can make a referral if you want to.
Sure.
If you want to call up the Village Association and say, look, I've got this permit here, or somebody's asked to do this, what are your thoughts about that? You can do it anyway without it being in a policy.
We surely know that, you know, you're gonna have, you know, folks in Woods Hole are gonna make
Yes.
some ideas and suggestions on events there. T-Ticket Civic Association has been, you know, these are all associations that really want some input in what happens in their neighborhood. Okay.
We've got to separate, there's two things here. What we're talking about is including referrals from third-party organizations that are not town departments. Isn't that the whole purpose of having these events listed on our agenda, so that these organizations and individuals can come in and give their feedback at that time? I think it's the camel's nose under the tent if we're going to start making these organizations on par with town departments. If we're going to say we're going to refer an event to the DPW, the Design Review Committee, and the Falmouth Village Association, doesn't that make the Falmouth Village Association a town department at that point?
Don't put it in there, just to take it
Okay,
out.
so
If you want to do it, you can do it, but it doesn't have to,
You don't
it
have to
doesn't
have the word
be part
referrals
of
You know
there.
what, I'd like to
policy.
go back to the motion that started with Kevin, and let's work from there, because I don't see, this is the
Going
dog
around
chasing
in
its tail.
circles, you're
Yeah,
right.
we really are.
Well,
So Kevin has a motion, and let's go from there, and see where we are on Kevin's
Before we go with motions, I'm going to remind you all, Mr. McNamara pointed out that what we have on the town website is not what we have in front of us. So the general public is seeing something different. I think
How about this?
We've got
That I'm not
feedback.
making a motion to do, I'm not gonna make a motion that we change the policy at this time. I'm gonna speak that we're gonna change it on the website so people have an opportunity to view it. So then we'll make a motion at some point in time. The board might consider, number 2, instead of delegation of permitting authority, it would be special events recommendations. The town manager shall review with an internal working group and make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen for all special events, period.
Second.
I think that's,
That's good.
that's simple, and it's, you know what, again, it just summarizes everything we get. We get 5 pieces of paper for some events. Let them have their office take the 5 pieces of paper and say, you know what, we don't have a problem with this event.
Okay, so
That's right.
we're all in agreement changing paragraph, section 2 to that wording.
The first part.
Okay. Are we all in agreement? Let's talk about the referrals. Section P on page 4. Can we remove the referrals to neighborhood and village associations?
That's
I
fine.
have no problem with
Okay,
that.
we're all in agreement with that? Okay, good. So then the only thing we're hung up on at this point is the inclusion of Peg Noonan Park and the Village Green.
And if I may, that's what I think
the
we
town
need
hall
to work
square.
on and bring back. That's more clear, and it deals with land use, as you suggested. Because I remember when that issue came up at the beach, and there were some things that if we had had in place, it would have been easier to deal with it, and we didn't. So that's what we need to think about. What is it about the use of the public space that if it's in writing and it's in place, it makes it easier to deal with issues that arise that when people are gathering in public places where they maybe ought not to be? I don't know, something like. I think we need to rework the language and bring it back.
Can I-
And when the draft is completed, the draft gets on the website at the same time the agenda gets posted, so that people see the draft that we're going to discuss the next time around. Is
It may be what we can do on this,
Mhm.
is if we're gonna do this section 3, that also make a statement there, that the Board of Selectmen is designating an area of Shore Street for special offense in the months of July and August. That's something up for discussion. I'm not making that decision, but it's an area where we can discuss here. Because, you know, a section of Shore Street and the lawn in front of the Recreation Department. Put that in the policy. That's, I mean, so that the town managers group has that at their disposal when they're working to make a recommendation. That's all. Let's talk about these things, because if we don't address it, it's just gonna be Pandora's box.
I
using
agree,
rodeo
but I
terms.
think that should be in a land use policy. I think we should have something separate from the
Well,
event
these folks
policy.
want closure, they want to make a decision moving forward,
Well,
everyone does, so.
Well,
I
I
mean,
understand.
We haven't even decided to do a land use policy, and that'd be another
Right.
4 months. so-
Okay, well,
Yeah.
so what we have now, we have the changes to section 2, and then we have the removal in section P here, the referrals. At the very least, we can ask the town manager's office to make sure that those changes are made, and what we have in front of us is posted to the town's website before the end of the week. Then we can be
Before
sure.
the agenda goes out.
Well, before anything else, let's make sure that this version with those 2 changes gets posted to the town's website so that the general public can see what we're seeing. And then we can have this on the agenda in 2 weeks to look over it and start, like you said, you
We'll
want
have
to work
another
with Doug
draft.
and have another draft that at that
Done.
time, we'll post that with the agenda as well, so that there's the version we're looking at. So when the agenda's posted, that version is available as well.
Mrs. Flynn suggested that maybe her and Doug could potentially take a shot at this number 3. I'd be happy to let them, and either, any of us could give them our input,
Okay.
if they're so willing to do so.
Works for me.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
All right.
Okay, so we've made some progress. All right?
Yeah.
Would it make sense to include in the special events use policy, the draft that's online, the town manager's suggestion of his internal working committee? I know that we're not voting on that, that's up to you, Mr. Suso, but if that's the direction we're heading, to have that committee exist, should that be also some people that the public can see? That's who we're thinking about putting on this committee, or who you're thinking about putting on the committee?
Certainly.
Are we all set then? Ready to move on? Okay,
What are
very
we
good.
doing with this motion?
There's
They- they
no
were just
motion.
changing.
There's no
There was
second.
no motion, we're just not, they're gonna change it in the policy, and then post it, you're right.
It's consensus. Do we want to take a break, or do we want to move through these other items? and-
Yeah, I don't think there's much.
Okay. All right, so town manager, town manager review process.
This won't take long. I put in each of your boxes a copy of an article from the New York Times regarding annual reviews. And, you know, obviously, you're not going to read it now, but what it says is that, you know, most organizations are moving away from these check-off types of evaluations, and they're moving more into more communication with the person they supervise, especially when they're executives, and also more or less, in an evaluation, is more or less preparing a narrative. But anyway, you can read the article. So what I've given you is the material that was given to us at the annual Massachusetts Selectmen's Association meeting back in, I don't know, October, September, July, whenever it was, I don't remember. And this was put together by Josh Ostroff, who's on the Natick Board of Selectmen, Carl Valenti, who's the town manager in Lexington, and Denise Casey, who's the HR director for the town of Lexington. This is their document. The first part, that what you look at, is really just the PowerPoint presentation that they made. And then they gave examples of goals that they had in 2014. They were town administrator, Board of Selectmen goals. If you remember, we did that last year with Julian. He prepared the goals. He met with us in open session, we reviewed the goals, we came up with a finalized list of goals, and that's what he's been working with for this next year. So that then forms the basis, if you will, for the evaluation. The next page were the goals that they had proposed back in 2012. Attachment 3 is really an excerpt from the contract that the Board of Selectmen has with the town manager. And then attachment 4 is the evaluation. I think, just even going back to the PowerPoint, the whole point of it was that the standard should be high and that there should be no surprise. So that when the town manager is reviewed by the Board of Selectmen, there shouldn't be any surprises in terms of what the selectmen are going to say. And when they talk about goals, they should be fair. The process should be clear about how the goals are developed, and I think we made that clear last year. And then the whole process of setting goals, that they have successful outcomes. And I think one of the goals that Julian had this past year was the whole space issue, if you recall, and he's worked on that. And there have been some successful outcomes as yet. It's not fully completed yet. It's a long way to go. But also that the highest priorities for the town are included in the goals. So the goal-setting process is really the basis for the entire evaluation. And then the review process of the goals. I know we do this in the county. We do it with the executive director of the Cape Cod Commission and also the county administrator. And they review their goals with us in terms of the new goals for the coming year. We review them at least twice a year to see where they are in terms of meeting their goals, and then we review them again at the end of the year in preparation for the final review. So to get to the employee performance evaluation, this is a document that they developed, and they use it for every single employee. The same one for everyone, but it varies in terms of how it's used. For instance, the first section on the first page explains the rating scale. And then it moves on to part 2, which are performance standards. And those are used for, it tells you, they're used for the employees in the various departments, not for managers. If you go to part 3 is what would be used for department head, and this is the part that's used for the town manager, which are the core responsibilities. So it's not a check-off in terms of scoring. It's a check-off when you read it, you take a look at what it says. For instance, planning, organization, flexibility. Schedules and plans, most efficient use of time. I don't need to read the whole thing. And then you give a supporting example. What are you aware of under this category that the town manager did that actually supports the rating, whether it exceeds, meets, or needs improvement? And there are 6 of those. And then when you get to the last part, that is the part where you write the narrative. And I think the section indicates that these are the supervisors, and in that case, that's the Board of Selectmen, conclusions as to the employee's overall level of performance. And given the competency ratings, which we just have done, the core competencies, and the achievement of the annual goals, each of us would summarize in a narrative form, and it's very short, so you don't have to write a book about how that employee actually performed. And then the rest of it would be handled the way we always have. Each individual does these, turns them into the chairman. The chairman compiles it together. You can do it with one other person. You can't do it with 3. And make one document out of it. But the document would include a combining of the scores for the core competencies, but each narrative from each selectman would appear individually in the evaluation. You can't really take somebody's narrative and try to combine it. So the narratives would stand on their own from each selectman. The core competencies would be averaged and then come up with one. Then we would bring the document to the table, and we would have the board would have a discussion in open session about the town manager's performance, and we would then complete the process, and then the next step would be, and then whatever the contract says about pay increases, we would implement that along with the evaluation. So that's how it works. And I didn't take it and try to make it look like a Falmouth document until you had an opportunity to look at it and read it over and see if that's something that, I think it's a significant improvement over what we used before, where you had to do all these checks and add them all up. And this way, it requires concentrating on the goals and whether or not the goals were achieved during the course of the year. And then setting new goals for the following year, which would be the next step. We wouldn't do that all on the same night. But that would be the process. And that is where most of the towns seem to be moving. I got the feeling from all the people who were there, they really like this. They saw this as getting away from all of that minute rating of in every single job category, and then coming up with a number that really was sort of meaningless, particularly when you had to take it and average it. And sometimes, try that when you have only 3. Because all you need is one person to score somebody really low, and it really skews the performance. So ratings like that is not as important as the narrative. The narrative is really the part that sums up from you as an individual how you see the town manager having performed over the course of the year. And I think it makes it a lot easier to do.
I think it's very difficult to rate a narrative. But I think that if you have the 6 suggestions of what you are looking for within the narrative, and then you have a value on exceeds, meets, and needs, that each one of those could have a numerical number as such. But a narrative is difficult until you give a direction from the person that is writing it, may not write it as weighty as they want to. So that's difficult. But as long as you have some direction from the narrative and you say that exceeds expectations or over to needs improvement, gives more of a number, numerical number.
Yeah, well, that's the point. You can go back to the checkoff part on the core responsibilities and then use that as the basis for the narrative. And you can make the narrative almost anything you want. It takes some thinking. I mean, you have to really think it through. I just did a narrative for an employee a couple of weeks ago, and it does take some thought. But if you go back to the goals, and if you have a manager that is really accomplishing the goals, and you see those accomplishments, then it's much easier to write the narrative if you relate it to the goals, too. And we have the goals from this year, and we know where Julian has been working on those. So if you write a narrative based on that, it won't take long to fill up that page.
No.
I agree with one point that Becky's talking about. I think each one of these should have a point value because it's much easier versus give an illustration, you got,
Oh, you mean give a point value to the expectations?
To each one of those things, give them a point value, so then you come up with a numerical score.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I tend to agree with you, and certainly, it's easy to say needs improvement would be 1, meets would be 2, exceeds would be 3, and then you can add everything up, and obviously the higher the better. Because you do have to be able to average these all out and provide some sort of value, I think.
In the corporate world, you came up with a 3.7 or, 3.9, so you need to come up with that, especially when you're having 5 people.
If you don't even take a number, we're going to have 5 people doing this. You're going to have 5 different, for instance, take planning, organization, and flexibility. You're going to have 5 different checkoffs here. So you can look at how many people checked off exceeds, how many checked off meets and needs improvement. And you don't need numbers, you can just average them out, and that's when you come out with an average of meets expectations. But, that's what everyone's trying to stay away.
I think you still need a number to come up with the needs expectations.
I actually think
That's the whole point, is to get away from the numbers.
I think the 5 pieces of data is actually more interesting.
The what?
I think it's more interesting to say you got 2 exceeds and 2 needs and 1 meets, and say the number 3 isn't, or the middle number's not interesting.
No,
It's
it's-
interesting you got the full range. So
Exactly.
for 5 data points, you don't bother averaging, you
Right.
show all 5 data points.
Absolutely. And the idea is to stay away from this averaging thing, because it's really meaningless in the end. What does it really say? But you're right, when you look at, it, 5 people have looked at this, and this is how it came out on the scale, 3, 2, 1, 4, whatever. And that says something it says something to the manager
But it says
as
something
well.
very different than all 5 people saying
Averaging.
it meets.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm
With the same
willing
number-
to
number
try
of
it,
values
because
out.
I think our former review was a little hard
No,
to
I
work
think
with.
this is very good.
But I will remind the board that we're due right now. and-
I know we are.
And we need
Well-
this for budgeting for next year. In other
I-
words, the town manager, we need to give some direction there, because he's
Right.
establishing a budget as well for his office.
I can take this and just make it a Town of Falmouth form, and I gave a copy to Julia, and I gave copies to Heather, so they may have some comments they
Well, I don't
want
want
to
to
make.
let Brent
And we
get off
could
the hook,
take it,
because
and
it's the
then-
chairman's job, and it's one of the hardest jobs to put
What?
this all together. It'd be great, but I
Yeah, but
think
this won't be hard anymore as the chairman.
I
This will
know.
be really easy if we follow the suggestions that
And I-
Doug made, and I think those are really good. You don't know who did, the exceeds or the meets or the whatever, but you see where the general impressions are of the various board members. And it's always nice to know that, gee, somebody thought, or 3 people thought that, and 2 thought something else. And I think that's helpful to Julian, too, because he knows who he has to work with, maybe, a little more closely, but he would have the opportunity to talk with each person
I mean,
anyway.
the evaluation could be 10 pieces of paper, 5 pieces, 2 pieces from each one of us.
Yeah.
And that's what it is.
That's
You
right.
don't
And
even
a
have to-
narrative, and
you-
that's it.
You don't even have to compile it. It can be
You
the
don't
5
have to
narratives.
compile it.
You could just say it's,
Here it
here are the
is.
5 different reports.
And then
you
just
received.
one sheet in the front that just lays out which ones, how many were checked off. And then you end up, and then you have the narratives, but they're the originals, so nobody has to rewrite anything.
Well,
Well, that's my question on the open meeting law. If I'm not mistaken, are these subject to?
no, the content
Right.
is not subject to public, is not subject to release to the public, because it's considered personnel data. And that's where having a number may be necessary, so that we can, in some way, shape, or form, have a public
we went through
discussion
this
on it.
last
No,
year, Pat.
the documents are, once you bring them to the table and discuss them, they become a public record. They are not subject to the personnel records.
That's what I'm saying, that's the
Non-evaluations are
policy
not.
change, because we've never brought them to the table.
I know, and
With-
I think we were wrong. If you read the open meeting law, you can't discuss these in executive session.
We didn't
They're-
discuss,
No,
I
we
mean,
didn't.
as in last year, we didn't
No.
discuss them in
Right.
executive session.
No.
We discussed them individually with the town manager if someone wanted to
And
go
that's
through.
okay.
That's okay. But I think we took the general evaluation score and then discussed that in public session for the remuneration.
Yeah, we did.
So that's what I'm saying. If you're saying we're gonna discuss the entire thing in
It's-
public session, that's a little change of where we've been.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you want to discuss it, it has to be in public session.
Right.
If we want to have a discussion about
Unless you're
it.
doing it individually.
Julian, you have
Mr.
some
Chairman, if I
feedback?
could just interject, thank you. I should say that Selectman Flynn did discuss this with me, and I'm very comfortable with this approach being considered. One thought is, as an alternative to this numeric summary, that, for instance, the chair can summarize the 5 sets of results and provide a summary publicly, and then each individual selectman can discuss their piece with me individually. But the summary does not necessarily have to be numeric, it can just be, it's basically assembled and discussed in summary form by the chair, which I think has the same effect as what was just described, but you don't need to use a numeric component to that to achieve that result. So just a thought, an alternative suggestion. But I'm comfortable with this approach to the extent that the board would like to give it a go. I'm certainly very comfortable with that.
I'm inclined to reach out to Frank to discuss what can and can't be released so that we're all on the same page and try to get some clarity around that. When you look at this, there's 8 pages, which I think frankly is phenomenal.
But we only start here. We don't use the other.
Well, actually, yeah, without the rating scale, but there'd be the goals and then the performance standards. So you're right, I mean, it's 7 pages essentially of data.
But part, if you look at the.
Well, we don't have
part
to
two-
use this if we don't want.
Well,
We don't want to.
I think that would be
I was only
necessary.
suggesting we use part 3, period.
I would suggest part 1 should be as well.
One?
Yeah, the performance on prior year goals, because that's, is that not part of what we've asked of him to do? Is we said, okay, these are the goals we wanted you to accomplish this year, and we would, I think, would want to have some feedback. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you'd like to have some feedback on where the board thinks he is with those goals and whether we think that he's been working towards them adequately. I like the way this simplifies things, though, because one of the things that always sort of, even in the private sector, in the corporate world where I work, I find it ironic that they have, sometimes they'll have these 5-step scales where they have the walk on water, your Jesus types, which is the highest, then you have an exceeds, a meets, a needs improvement, and they also have at the bottom of the scale, I forget what it is, but basically the way it's described to me over the years is that if you have these numbers, you shouldn't be employed by us. But yet they still have those numbers there, so why bother?
It's the new guy who's getting canned.
Yeah, I mean, this narrows it down to the 3 most important factors is, does the individual meet the expectations, do they exceed them, or do they need improvement? Because if they're getting below needs improvement, then they shouldn't be employed. And if they're above exceeds expectations, I don't know, you either exceed them or you don't. I don't know how you get higher than exceeds expectations, so I do like the way this is laid out, and I do agree with Doug that I think having the kind of feedback to say, okay, 2 members of the board said exceeds, 2 said meets, and 1 said needs, and then you can, from the comments, I think, judge and determine, okay, where is the discrepancy? Because like you said, Pat, if you've got a situation, and it's happened, if you've got a situation where there's a personality conflict and there's somebody's purposely putting needs improvement or, you know, in prior reviews, if you've got the bottom of the barrel there, there's the potential of dragging down a review unnecessarily as opposed to having a good objective review. And I think this allows for a more objective review than, say, a numerical score that's going to be skewed because somebody's got a chip on their shoulder.
And then Julia could provide us again with a list of the goals for this year before we start this process, so we know where they are and they're included in the document. We do the document, so it becomes a Falmouth document.
I think it's a great idea if Pat wants to put this together to represent Falmouth, at least
Yeah, I
we'll
mean, so
try it
it's
this year.
not the town of Lexington.
I don't think there's
Or doesn't it
too much,
say
other
that?
than where
Or
it
maybe
says
it doesn't
town
say.
of, oh, it only says it on the first page of attachment 4, it says town of Lexington.
I would not
Oh.
include part 2, page 4, the customer service and the safety.
No, that does it,
But I think the front page of that, I would leave the personal, professional, organizational integrity. The first 3 items, I do think, are
The what?
in part 2. The
Part
front
2.
page, I think those are
Page
items
3.
that,
What?
part 2, page 3,
Yep.
of the personal integrity, teamwork, and interpersonal skills. I think those are worthwhile putting onto the evaluation.
Okay, well,
But
that's,
But customer service and safety, I don't see as really being part of.
Well, I do think customer service is a part of the town manager's job.
but that part was not
Safety-
designed for the town manager.
Well,
Let me just say
I
that.
think safety obviously wasn't. It
Right.
talks about completing potentially hazardous work assignments, and although working with the public, I think sometimes can be hazardous. But the customer service, I think, is definitely applicable. I would agree to taking off section 5.
But, you know, if you look at the really core responsibilities,
Mhm.
some of that is part of those core responsibilities. Some of these things that you would just have to, in your narrative, you might want to include that. But to actually rate, how are you going to rate teamwork? Because we don't really see the teamwork. We don't see Julian at work necessarily with the department heads and all that, so it's very difficult to rate someone on that. Interpersonal skills and even customer service, we're not always there when he's delivering the customer service. So that's why that part doesn't usually go with the manager's responsibilities. It's kind of, you keep those in mind, certainly, but when you rate the individual on the 6 areas, then that would come as part of the narrative. I mean, if it jumped out at you that maybe there was a real issue with teamwork, it could become part of the narrative.
I do think making it shorter will make it better.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
That we were actually, but it is only 6 things that we are filling out.
Yeah.
You're actually going to be able to not fall into, I'm going to check off, because it's a fairly lengthy document that we can actually get more details in.
It just doesn't apply because we don't observe it, for one thing.
Well, except I still think under the performance standards, personal, professional, and organizational integrity, I think that's absolutely needed. I think teamwork, even though we may not have exposure to it as much as somebody working in town hall on a daily basis, I think we can certainly sit down and think about, and if we have to reach out to individuals who work with Julian directly and get some feedback in that regard. But I think these are standards that we want to hold Julian to, that we want to hold, whether it's Julian or any town manager. I think we need to have these standards. Interpersonal skills, absolutely. Customer service, that's an integral part of what we do. And in fact, right off the bat, and I'm not trying to rate Julian here right now, but I think certainly he's demonstrated aspects of customer service when he talks about the reorganization of town hall in order to serve the public better. That's one of the things he talked about at town meeting, was he's undertaking these changes in town hall in order to serve the public better. So very clearly, I think customer service plays into what he does. Safety, I would tend to agree. It talks about uses and wears protective equipment and clothing. A flame retardant suit perhaps, but other than that, I don't know that there are too many protective equipment required by the town manager, so. I think I'd be all in favor of striking number 5 on page 4, but I think the other 4 categories should remain. Feedback,
Right.
folks? I mean, let's.
I mean, I don't disagree with you that those 4 categories are important aspects of his job. I just think that I would rather keep them in my mind as I'm filling out the other pages. Of course, I want those, and I might refer to them, but having fewer questions to answer, I think you're going to get a better answer from me than having 15 questions to answer.
I think we were trying to fit the words to the job, so I think it's best to just eliminate number 4 and number 5, because we were reading and then we were saying, well, does he do this, does he do that? And if he doesn't do customer service and he doesn't do safety, then they simply come off of that.
But the whole idea is that for someone at his level, you evaluate the core responsibilities of the position. Those are certainly, they are not his objectives necessarily, that it's just part of who he is because of his education, his experience, his background. How important is it for us to rate that?
Well, I think there's enough places
I
on all those to say that. I mean, there's a lot that is being asked, and I think all of that in thinking can come into these other answers.
Yeah.
So I'm still concerned, though, that we're still talking about taking off items like 1, 2, and 3. Personal, professional.
Not part 2, no.
No.
Oh.
No, it's on page.
Oh, you're talking about
page
performance
4,
standards.
Number 4,
And
number
we're not
5.
talking, those performance standards, this form wasn't designed to use that for managers.
It may not have been,
No,
but
I'm just saying that.
still tend to
You
think
want
that
to include it.
I
So
think
the
it applies.
question is, does the board agree or don't they agree? And it's up to you to decide if you want to include it
It's
or
up to
not
all of us.
include it. Well, I know.
Yeah, and I, like I said, I think the performance standards, pages 3 and 4, I think they all apply with the exception of number 5, which very clearly does, the wording there describes someone who might work in the field and has a different job description. But item number 1, maintains high standards of ethics, honesty, and integrity in all professional matters. Quite frankly, I think that's something that we want to be providing feedback on. Item 2.
I think what we were talking about is page 4, number 4, and number 5.
Okay.
We weren't talking about 1, 2, and 3 on page 3.
So,
The discussion is, are you going to rate the town manager about how he does customer service? And are you going to rate the town manager on safety issues? And my point is, those two questions do not need to be answered by the selectman.
I agree on 5. Are we all in agreement on 5?
Well,
Let's
we
start
should
from the
just
bottom.
talk about 3 and 4, because it goes together, pages 3 and 4. Do we include those, all of them, part of them, in the evaluation or not? Because the form wasn't designed for that purpose, but if you choose to use it, then that's your choice. So if you want to include part 2, then do you want to include all of it or some of it?
I would
That's the
like to
question.
include 1, 2, and 3 of performance standards, part 2, on page 3.
Okay.
And that's as much. 1, 2, and 3 on page 3, performance standards.
Can we all agree on that?
No
I don't
customer
agree,
service.
but that, I mean, I'm only one.
It doesn't matter either way. I'm just going to say that the key is getting this done. For someone who's tallied these 3 times over my term,
And
as
I've done
being
it
the chairman of the
or
Board of
I've done it
Selectmen,
twice. Yeah.
it is the hardest thing to get people to do it. So the smaller you make it, the easier it's going to be, but
I
that's
agree,
fine.
but I don't want to make it so small
All right.
that we're cutting out key pieces of it. And
Well, we're going to have to cut out, we cannot evaluate him on every single thing he does. So we have to we have to cut out something.
Right, but there's some things that are important, and quite frankly, I think
Well,
in
everything-
personal,
Why don't you
professional,
just-
organizational integrity, I'll go along with what Rebecca said. I
Well, then
think.
poll the board. What did they want? 1, 2, and 3. That's what she suggested. So
That's
see if
exactly
anybody
what I
wants to
suggested.
include 1, 2, and 3.
Can we all agree on 1, 2, and 3? And we'll just take off 4 and 5.
That's correct.
That sounds great.
I'll agree to that.
Okay, then we've agreed.
Thank
So
you.
we'll strike 4 and 5. Page 4 is completely gone, but we'll keep 1, 2, and 3 on page 3.
And I guess what I will reserve is I'll be brief in some things and lengthy in others so that I can give feedback where I feel is most.
And that's exactly how we can do it. Each one of us will, some of us will provide more feedback than others on some items, and, okay.
Because you can give examples if you choose. You don't have to, but they suggest that you provide supporting examples.
I think that's always helpful.
Okay.
Okay? So I will have this back to you in a few days,
Okay?
and you
Okay.
can get started.
All
With
right.
the goals from Mr. Suso.
Yeah, when we get to go, yeah,
Do you have a time when you want this done by,
It's up to
Mr.
Rich.
Putnam?
yes. That's-
Well, it is the end of the year, so I think, why don't we say sooner than later, just to make sure that we try to
It's
work
not
on
a
it.
date, so
How about,
But we're not going to try to have an open session discussion December 16th.
no, but why don't we say by December 16th, let's try to have this back to me,
Completed.
completed. And it's-
He's a tough
we'll
teacher.
crack the whip here,
It's all right,
so.
I've been late before. That's all
Are we good with that?
right. Sure, give it a good shot.
All right. All right, 2014 annual license renewals. We have 3 pages here. We'll go section by section.
I move all alcohol retail package store license.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This includes, let me, at the very least, I'd like to just, and we neglected this last time, and I apologize to the public. I think it's deserving of just reading at least the names of these. I know it can be a little tedious. But under all alcoholic retail package store license, we have Murphy's Package Store, North Falmouth Liquors, T-Ticket Market, Freeway Enterprises, and West Falmouth Market. We have a motion and a second to approve those renewals. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections?
I move
Unanimous.
the all alcohol club license.
Mr. Chairman, to make a disclosure, I'm the holder of an all-alcoholic seasonal liquor license, which is on premise, okay?
Okay.
Seconded.
Thank you. Motion and a second. This includes Green Pond Yacht Club and Seacrest Beach Hotel. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? It's unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I move all alcohol restaurant licenses as listed.
Mr. Chairman, just to make a disclosure, I'm the holder of an all-alcoholic seasonal liquor license. There are some of these licenses, because of the close proximity to theirs and mine, that I'll abstain from the vote, so I won't even vote on any of these, rather than belabor picking those particular restaurants out.
All right, thank you, Mr. Murphy. This includes the Anchor Ale House, Beach House Restaurant, British Beer Company, Cape Cod Country Club, Chappaquoit Grill, Captain Kidd Restaurant, Casino Restaurant, DJ's Family Sports Pub, Fishmonger Cafe, The Glass Onion, Golden Swan Indian Cuisine, Golf Club of Cape Cod, Grill 327, Grill 500, Just One Bite Restaurant, J.R. Brody's 99 Restaurant and Pub, Osteria La Civetta, Paul's Pizza, The Pizza Bar, Quahog Republic Dive Bar, Quarterdeck Restaurant, Town Tavern, and Woods Hole Country Club. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition?
One abstention.
And one abstention. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move the wine and malt restaurant license for Homeport Sushi and Kitchen, Gifford Street, Falmouth.
Second?
Mr. Chairman, make a disclosure, I'm the holder of an all-alcoholic seasonal liquor license.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. And that is the one license under that category. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? It's unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I move the wine and malt club license for St. Anthony's Club on Brick Hill Road in Falmouth.
Do we have a second?
Second?
A motion and a second. That's the only one under that category. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'm the holder of an all-alcoholic seasonal liquor license.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? None.
Mr. Chairman, I move the wine and malt package store license for Wild Harbor General Store, 200 Maiden Road, North Falmouth.
Do we have a
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I move the common victualler licenses as described.
Second.
Motion and a second. This includes the Anchor Ale House, the Beach House Restaurant, the British Beer Company, Burger King, Cape Cod Country Club, Captain Kidd Restaurant, Casino Restaurant, Chappaquoit Grill, D'Angelo's Sandwich Shop, DJ's Family Sports Pub, Eulinda's, Fishmonger Cafe, The Glass Onion, Golf Club of Cape Cod, Golden Swan Indian Cuisine, Green Pond Yacht Club, Grill 327, Grill 500, J.R. Brody's, Just One Bite Restaurant, McDonald's, 99 Restaurant and Pub, Osteria La Civetta, Paul's Pizza, Pickle Jar Kitchen, The Pizza Bar, Quarterdeck Restaurant, Quahog Republic Dive Bar, St. Anthony's Club, Seacrest Beach Hotel, Starbucks, Town Tavern, and the Woods Hole Country Club.
I do have one question. Does anyone know if Grill 327 is changing their name? They had a new sign up last week that was then covered up with a tarp and then revealed again with the name of Jack's.
Oh.
Yeah, it's changing the ownership, but they're currently working off the other license, the former
Okay.
license.
Okay.
Well, they'll have to come before us
Right.
for all the necessary changes, so.
That's what they do.
Further discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I move the inn holder's license for Inn on the Square.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? None.
Mr. Chairman, I move the automatic amusement device licenses.
And this is for
Second.
motion and a second. Thank you. For the Beach House Restaurant, Captain Kidd Restaurant, Seacrest Beach Hotel, and the Town Tavern. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I move the entertainment licenses.
Second?
Motion and a second. This includes the Anchor Ale House, the Beach House Restaurant, British Beer Company, J.R. Brody's, Captain Kidd Restaurant, Casino Restaurant, Fishmonger Cafe, Golf Club of Cape Cod, Green Pond Yacht Club, Grill 327, Grill 500, The Pizza Bar, Quahog Republic Dive Bar, Quarterdeck Restaurant, Seacrest Beach Hotel, St. Anthony's Club, Town Tavern, and the Woods Hole Country Club. Any
I have a
discussion?
question. Have we heard anything about the Anchor Hill House? I remember last year when we first did this license, there were some neighbors concerned about the noise level with the recorded music, and we just wasn't sure if we'd heard anything more complaints. Okay.
Mr. Sousa, I hate to put you on the spot. Have we had any feedback?
I don't recall receiving any concerns
Great.
raised. No.
Okay.
All right. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition?
Mr. Chairman, I move the Sunday entertainment license for the Seacrest Beach Hotel.
Second?
Motion and a second, that's the only one under that category. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Unanimous. All right. And that brings us to the individual selectmen's reports. We have some draft agendas. I don't know if they were provided separately. We have a draft for the 16th, which should have been provided. Anyone have any updates they'd like to share with us?
Just a reminder that this weekend is Christmas by the Sea in Falmouth, and I believe the board was invited to march in the parade.
Right.
So I know I plan on coming. There's a bunch of events, and the town clerk also is awarding the cane this Saturday at Atria. So a reminder if anyone can make it. Mildred Allen, is that?
Mildred Allen, she's going to be 105.
Wow.
I won't be able to make it, but I'm going to send a card. Might be nice if we sent a card from the board congratulating her on her 105th birthday.
If you
And maybe Michael could present it to her on behalf, I can't make it.
no, but if someone were to pick it up and leave it in the office, I'd be happy to
Yeah.
sign it. The only other thing I wanted to suggest is, bearing the fact that it's the holiday season, and maybe after our next meeting, we might adjourn after the meeting and have a beverage and wish each other well for 2014.
December 16th.
We can make plans for that.
Okay.
The party planner.
Well, I don't know about that.
Any other updates from anyone else?
We do come back tomorrow night, right?
We
Yes,
come back
we
tomorrow
have,
night for the planning board.
we have planning board meeting tomorrow night. We have a busy week this week.
Mhm.
All right. Any questions about Mr. Suso's report? Mr. Suso, anything you feel a need to highlight, or are we good?
Well, given my short absence over the Thanksgiving holiday, my report is verbal only, so I don't have one in writing to provide, Mr. Chairman, but Thanksgiving was enjoyable, and we're all counting our blessings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brevity is the soul of it. I like that. Huh?
I guess I will mention one thing from Thanksgiving, and both an apology that it happened that the turbine was running on Thursday morning, but also thanks to Mr. Patamas for getting it shut off within, I think, 5 or 10 minutes of him finding out that it was not running, and it did run, I think, for a total of about 38 minutes on that morning.
Yeah, thank you,
And that
Selectman
was
Jones.
a
If I could just
glitch.
piggyback on that a moment, just to confirm, and I appreciate you raising that. I do want to underscore that that was a fully unanticipated, that we had the appropriate people involved in advance in that programming, but we know from some challenging experience with the fact that we have custom operating software for the Vestas turbines, and we are the only entity with that software, and had to engage Vestas to develop it specifically for our turbines, given that they are operated in a manner that other Vestas turbines are not. It is challenging for those single days when there is a shutdown that is not regularly scheduled within a seven-day cycle of the week. And even though we felt all checks and balances in place, and the request for the shutdown was placed, that order, for reasons that we understand to have been a programming error. They unfortunately did run for 38 minutes on Thanksgiving morning. So I do want to echo Selectman Jones' comment. Our apologies to all. I want to assure all that it was in no way intended. It was an embarrassment. And I do thank wastewater Superintendent Jerry Patamas for stepping in and manually correcting that as soon as it was aware. And our apologies to the neighbors that were affected in a negative way. I assure all that it was unintentional. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any last comments or questions? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any objections? Good night, ladies and gentlemen. We are adjourned.